look at it on the screen. I don't print all the paper.
Okay. So, are we on?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so, good evening and welcome. I'm Natasha Spada, the Chair of the Needham Planning Board, and I'm calling the June 18th, 2024 Planning Board meeting to order. This meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted in a hybrid manner consistent with current state regulations and is being recorded. All materials for this meeting are available on the town's website, needhamma.gov. And I'll call the roll for the record. When I call your name, please say you're present. Adam Block.
Present.
Artie Crocker.
Present.
Paul Alpert.
Present.
Justin McCullen.
Present.
Great, and our staff here is Lee Newman and Alexandra Klee. So our agenda tonight, and I'm hoping that everybody knows that we're here. If you're watching and you didn't know that we changed the venue, we're at Town Hall at the what is this called? The Selectmen
Board chambers, yes.
Board Chambers. So we have three public hearings tonight. The first is a major project site plan special permit for WR Noodle Group at former Harvey's Hardware regarding the request to renovate the former retail space for use as a full-service noodle restaurant with 36 seats and a takeout station. The second public hearing is an amendment to the major project site plan review for Sweet Basil. It's an 11-year around outdoor seats adjacent to the building with an additional waiver of 4 spaces and a parklet for 28 seats and 10 parking spaces, and this will need approval from the Select Board. The third is a continuation of the public hearing for Blue on Highland from 6/4/24, which is going to design review and will be continued at the next meeting on July 11th. And that one actually, Lee, is
Yeah, we're not gonna just continue to the meeting on July 11th.
at 7 PM. Okay. Then we have an appointment for the discussion of Hone recommended MBTA compliance zoning at 100 West Street. We have an A&R plan for 321 Cartwright that is also
Going to be withdrawn.
going to be withdrawn. We have a request to review and approve landscaping plan and subdivision documents for 920 South Street. A deliberation for major project site plan special permit for the tennis courts at the high school. We have a discussion and vote to adopt the code of conduct, a discussion and comment of select board goals for FY 2025 and FY 2026. The design review board reappointment of Stephen Dornbush, then meeting minutes and the reports and correspondence. So with that, I move to open the hearing on major project site plan special permit for WR Noodle Group at former Harvey's Hardware, regarding to renovate. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice?
So move to open the hearing as well as the motion to waive. We'll probably have to do the first motion first.
So motion to open the hearing?
Yep.
The second?
Second.
Okay, so Justin and Adam, and then motion to waive the reading of the legal notice. Again,
So moved.
Justin and Adam.
Second,
Okay.
yes.
So, hi,
We
George.
take a vote, we should take a vote on the second motion.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, so,
Okay, Madam Chair, may I make a brief statement?
sure.
I just want to announce that back about 13 years ago, I did some legal work for Jeff and Gary Katz, so that could be seen as an appearance of a conflict of interest. I really don't think that I have a conflict of interest. I have spoken to town council. He advised me to file the proper form with the town clerk, which I did, and in accordance with our proposed code of conduct, I am making disclosure to the applicant that is the situation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You have 10 seconds to object to my being here.
Well, considering how small a town it is, I have possible conflict things all the time. No objection here.
So George, you want to introduce yourself and
Sure.
your team and?
Yes. So my name is George Hunter Jr. I'm the attorney here on behalf of WR Noodle with respect to this application. And with me is Ray, who's the owner proprietor, and his associate. And basically, I'll probably do most of the presentation, but if you have questions about especially the menu and operations, then Ray can certainly All right, so
Do you need us to post anything up there? or
I
will you
don't-
be? Okay,
I don't believe so.
okay.
So it's, as indicated, this is for the space at 998 Great Plain Avenue. This is, it's billed sort of as former Harvey's. It wasn't the main body of Harvey's. It's what I like to refer to as the annex. If you ever went into Harvey's, and I'm sure you all did at some point, this was when you went through the door, and this was the section that had all like the housewares and the
kitchen stuff.
appliances, and yes, and all the sort of odds and ends stuff that they didn't have room to put in the main piece. So this is that section. It's shown as parcel 66 on Assessor's Map 47. It is in a building that contains this space. There's an adjacent space for the bar or barre, I never know how to pronounce that. And then upstairs, there's offices on the upper floors. This space contains about 1,387 square feet on the first floor. And then there is also a 1,404 square foot basement. And an interesting side note, the basement is actually accessed from a door outside in the back to go down. The space has a kind of an interesting history. Most recently, it was used as the annex for Harvey's. But prior to that, it was used very briefly for an Italian delicatessen for maybe about a year or so, maybe a little more than a year. Don't really recall. I think I blinked and missed when that was there. For a few years before that, it was a TCBY yogurt. And for many years before that, it was Brigham's Ice Cream. And that use went all the way back in the 1960s. I couldn't find the starting point, but I did find 67 it was there. So it goes, the Brighams went way back.
Was Brigham's taking the bar location, was that part of Brigham's as well, or just this location?
That I don't recall personally.
Arnie, you should
I didn't-
remember.
I know. I'm trying to remember how wide it was,
I think it was just this location.
how wide I was back then.
I think it was just this location, but it might have been the whole thing, you know.
It certainly wasn't a super wide one.
Yeah.
I just don't remember what's to the left of it. I remember TCBY though.
Yeah. I actually went and tried to find some old photos just to see, because it's, somebody who grew up in Needham. It was curious because it was jogging my memory. I was like, and when I started digging, I was like, I know there was a Brigham's there. And it took me a while to find it, but I did find ultimately the Brighams. So in any event, here we are today. And the proposal is to redevelop the space, convert the space for a 36-seat restaurant specializing in noodles, ramen and that type of dishes. The restaurant, I said, 36 seats. There'll also be a takeout station. And it's going to be substantially similar to two other restaurants that Ray currently operates. One at 247 Newbury Street that's been open since 2016, and then one at 144 Tremont Street that's been open since 2018. So Ray has got some real experience in the industry, knows what he's doing, and is bringing this concept now to Needham for hopefully yet another great restaurant in town. The use as a restaurant use requires a special permit. And therefore that triggers the site plan review process, so we're here for that special permit. And in addition, this property has absolutely no parking whatsoever, not even a hint of a space. So basically, we need a full parking waiver for the property. Not unlike Giancarlo's Delicatessen that was there, which actually also went through site plan special permit review. In this case, this use calls for 22 parking spaces. That's calculated based on the 36 seats. That requires 12 spaces, and then the one takeout station requires 10 spaces, still an artifact in the bylaw, which doesn't make any logical sense, but needless to say, we have to use that calculation.
Spaces for takeouts?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We
And
really do
without
need
it,
to revise our
I know. And without it, they needed
know.
7, right? You needed
So
7.
retail would have been 7.
Retail is 7, 22 for restaurant.
Right, and Giancarlo's
lot.
Deli was 21, so we're one higher than the deli that was previously approved.
And no one remembers.
Yeah,
Did they have takeout though?
they did. They did. They had 18 seats, takeout, and a retail component. Yep. So 22 total parking spaces required. So where 7 is the retail basis, and that was the prior use, technically it would be a waiver of 17 spaces in terms of the upcharge, but technically I think you have to do the waiver based on the full thing, 22 spaces. So in general, in the downtown area, almost all the businesses have this issue, but this one, like a few in this sort of area, it has the advantage of being literally right in front of the large municipal parking lot. So it has very close proximity to a lot of available spaces, not to mention all the on-street spaces on Great Plain Avenue up and down either direction. So there is plenty of parking in the area to support the parking waiver. The hours of operation will be 11 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., depending upon demand. You know, as I always indicate on restaurant uses, that's the starting point, but, you know, that may be less than that, that may be more than that. So I would ask that there not be any hard limit imposed with respect to hours of operation, except maybe like 11 p.m., sort of the standard hours that the outside hours for restaurant uses in the downtown area. And let's see, I think the last issue to address is going to be probably the dumpster, which was a comment that you got from the Board of Health, one of a few of their things. Interestingly enough, in their comment, they do say that there needs to be 1 or 2 parking spaces set aside, but of course there are no parking spaces. So, which begs the question, well, where's the dumpster going to go? So I provided today a sketch that kind of shows a dumpster area. That was my first pass at it. I went out this afternoon and walked the site and took a close look and kind of evaluated the conditions. It's still generally the case that the dumpster or dumpsters would go in the alleyway. And if you're familiar, you know, as you sort of walk up Chestnut Street towards the center on the right side, you have the alleyway that goes behind the building.
And Alex is
Yep,
putting it up.
that's right. You can see it there. There is an existing half-size dumpster that serves the pharmacy that is located, originally it was supposed to be located on the opposite wall, which is why I did the sketch the way I did it, but it is actually located on the back of the building. So there is also space behind the back of the building for additional dumpsters. So rather than having them on the right side, right, so you can see the pink would be where the dumpster was originally planned for the pharmacy, but it's actually on the back of the building where it says 67.
So it's tucked into that little
It's
nook.
kind of, yeah, there's also a little gas service in there too as well.
Okay.
But even though it looks pretty small in there, there's actually ample room between the two buildings, right behind where it says 66, right? The yellow, you can see that's the space. Right behind that, there's actually ample room to put dumpsters behind there. So that's the vicinity of where they would go. Now, obviously, this is something we also have to work out with Board of Health in terms of meeting their requirements for dumpsters in terms of size and pickups and so.
But is there enough room for the truck to get in?
What truck would not get down this alleyway?
They go
So
back.
how do you empty the dump,
They wheel it out.
wheel it out? Yeah.
But is that also the loading zone?
So
It's the loading from the front, from the street?
So the loading is from Chestnut Street down that alleyway.
Right.
There's another alleyway, that you can see it there on the right-hand side, that is accessed kind of off of the municipal lot. But that alleyway actually belongs to the adjacent building and not to this building, so I think all the access for this building comes down off of Chestnut Street. So yes, there is loading that would come through the alley off of Chestnut Street, but again, there's room in there to have dumpsters arranged to make it work. And obviously, they're also out of sight, kind of off the main view.
Are there any concerns about any of those buildings that exit or discharge emergency exit to that alleyway that could be blocked by, would
So
any
the-
egress be inhibited?
Right, so this is also part of the reason to switch from the side that it's originally shown on. There actually is a door. This is probably why they did not put the dumpster for the pharmacy in that location. There's a door in that general vicinity. And then, there's room, so obviously you don't want to block that door. But then there's no door from that point to the end of the building off to the right.
Okay.
On that side, there's some windows, but there's no door. So basically, as the alley goes down, yeah, right in that section that Alex is sort of marking.
You're saying there's no door in
On
the rear?
On the bottom building. That's right, there's a door in the back of our space,
Looks like there are
The yellow
windows,
space?
though.
Which is on the floor plan.
and there's a door in the back of the other space. Sorry, the other one, Alex, yeah, there you go, right there, yep. But in between the doors, there's enough space to fit 2 dumpsters in there, 2 half-size dumpsters.
Is-
So there's room to fit them in that alleyway.
Assuming the health department is satisfied with the size and the number and the
Yes.
volume
Yes,
and the delivery and the disposal and pickup and all of those arrangements.
yes. And yes, there are windows on the building on the bottom that has the 65.
Yeah.
Right, there are windows along that, and that's another reason not to have the dumpsters up on that building, but to have
Which is the,
the Bolaway building in the,
right, not the orthodontist, which is farther down.
Katie Klein?
Yeah,
She's
it's
the next
farther
building
down, yeah, yeah.
So just a suggestion, perhaps once the Board of Health has said this is the right size, et cetera, perhaps some sort of marking or striping down, because as we all know, folks that empty dumpsters don't exactly put them back in the right way. And so, we don't want to be in a situation where we're blocking an actual secondary egress for a building. So just kind of best practice to have that marked or striped so that the people who do move that stuff can kind of put it back in the right location.
No, that's a great idea, and in fact, the dumpster for the pharmacy is actually, I'm not sure if they painted it or what they did, but it looks like there's a different gray where the dumpster goes, so I think they probably did it for that purpose. All right,
Anything
and
else, or is that?
That's
for right?
pretty much it, unless you have questions. The menu is going to be substantially the same as the other locations.
Okay, we'll go through it, but I
That's
just want to
Jeff
make
Paul.
sure. I just want to make sure that I recognize the comments from the town entities, and then we'll go through. And Adam, we'll start with you after. The police has no issues. The building inspector has no issues with zoning, but one of the questions one of the things they said is that you would need to make sure that the building is sprinklered because I know it's a non-sprinklered building, I believe, right? And you need to have an accessible entrance, and they measured all these things that you need to meet before you're able to do it, but they didn't have an issue with zoning. And I'll ask a couple of questions on that in a little bit, but the Board of Health had some items that, and then regarding, information on trash, and they said 2 full size is what I heard, one for recycling and one for trash. So,
Yep, we will evaluate if we can fit full size in there. I
it
am
looks
not sure
pretty
if we
tight.
can.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at it, already has it up now, it's pretty tight.
I am comfortable and confident that we can fit 2 half-size dumpsters in there at the very least.
Yeah.
Whether we can fit, whether it's a full size and a half size, I'm not sure. But obviously, if it's the smaller ones, it just means more frequent pickup.
Right. We did not receive comments from the fire department, so again, that would be interestingly to be able to get those comments, because for the sprinkler, the building and all of that. Engineering had no comment, and my understanding is that you're looking, again, as you mentioned, a special permit for use and a parking waiver. So Adam, do you want to start with questions, or?
So I think that the 2 issues that were really outstanding on are resolution with the health department and their satisfaction of the arrangement for the dumpster, including where it's going to be accessed and so on for pickup. And I understand that, the solution may be, if it's a smaller size to conform to the space, we'd want to see to help the health department's satisfaction of the increased frequency of pickups. Because they're pretty stringent on those, on the code, understandably. And then in terms of the sprinkling system, are you aware that you have to sprinkle, restaurants?
Have a sprinkler in the building.
Right, that's right. And you're aware that you'd have to do it? The fire department will require it? They know that?
Will that be required, though?
It will, a fire suppression system at all of the cooking devices.
We will have
yeah, the
our
cooking, yeah, the
own
cooking, yeah.
fire suppression system
Yeah.
under the hood.
Yeah.
Basically, every cooking equipment, but there's no sprinkler.
There's no sprinkler if you use it's a type 3B construction with no sprinklers, but you have to make sure that you sprinkler for all of the cooking areas, and that the building actually meets the the building codes, to make sure that you have the ratings between your unit and the other units.
I suspect that it is rated just because this was a different building that burned down at one point and was rebuilt as a masonry building. So I suspect it is rated.
To this, I wonder if the codes have changed since then, though.
So that was in 1990, I think?
Yeah, the codes, but I think that's what the building department is asking, that they have to
Right.
meet all the criteria, including that. And that's not necessarily in our purview, but that's a good question, Adam, because what is in our purview is that it doesn't have an accessible entrance right now, so I think you need to review that entrance, right? The vestibule is too small. And the other piece is that if you need to, for that fire suppression or for the grease traps or anything, if you need to bring utilities that aren't there, then it's gonna, you're gonna cut into the street and into the sidewalk, and that would be in our purview.
That may be the building department and DPW if we need to do.
Right, but if it affects the way that people walk on the sidewalk and do things like that, right?
What would be cut into the sidewalk related to?
Well, if they need to bring a
Fire
suppression
suppression.
system and the water level isn't, and they have to tap in, right? I mean, or if
Or
they
for a
have,
grease trap.
or the grease trap,
But an ice cream shop might not require a grease trap, or may not have back then.
Right.
So the health department and then the fire
the building,
department needs to be.
and the building department.
Need to be satisfied.
But for zoning and parking, they're all okay with it. The fire department, we haven't heard from, but
They're okay with that. And engineering had no comments on it.
it's more of, if you have to do any of these things, how would it impact, right?
Right. So as far as a grease trap goes, because of the fact that this whole block is already built up and it's so tight, there wouldn't be any exterior grease trap. So we would have to work with Board of Health. If we have to do a grease
Right.
trap, it has to be internal to the building, so it wouldn't be anything that would affect the exterior. I don't think we would need an upgraded water line, but, I guess that would be the only thing.
Yeah.
But that would be a minimal, that wouldn't be any different than any other utility work that has to get done.
Or any electrical, if you, you're putting a lot of equipment in there, if your electrical doesn't meet it and you have to go in. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out
Right,
there.
right.
It's not that part isn't in our purview until you have to bring stuff into the building and what that causes, if any disturbance to the exterior. Go ahead, Adam. That was it?
I think, yeah, I think we've identified the core issues that just need to be resolved, and we'll need in our, for our special permit, for our decision, we'll obviously need, and I don't know if we'll need to hold the hearing open, so we can receive the Department of Health and the Fire Department resolution, and the Building Department.
So I would request that you move forward and just simply make it subject to satisfying the departments.
As conditions.
Right.
Understandable. Okay.
Because typically that's often how it's been done, and I'm reasonably comfortable that we'll come to an arrangement to address the issues with because each department will have its own thing and we'll have to work through it.
I understand.
I mean, I think we can certainly draft a decision that makes it conditional, for
Right.
example, on the dumpster, that they provide a revised drawing which shows where it's going to go, and secure Board of Health approval before they get the permit to occupy or begin construction on the
Building
new
department.
restaurant. So we can condition the
And
permit
fire
accordingly.
department. Yeah, exactly. We've done that before. I don't have a problem with that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Artie?
Well, the goal obviously is to fill the spaces and fill them safely. And that's obviously, we're all trying to do that. We welcome another restaurant in town. It's a great town for restaurants. And I remember in Somerville, there was a ramen restaurant in Somerville, I don't know if it was Davis Square. People were going cuckoo about it. Lines were down the block for ramen. And hopefully that'll be the same thing here, but again, doing it safely. As far as the parking waiver, Little Spoon on the corner there, I'm not sure what parking they have availability as far as the Little Spoon. Maybe one space behind, I'm not sure, behind it, and they have a fair amount of seats in Little Spoon. Not sure exactly how that compares to this one, but I have no problem going with a waiver. Was there a back entrance to this? So there's a
Through the
public
alley.
back
Not a
entrance?
public back entrance.
Not a
It just
public.
goes into the kitchen.
Just goes into the kitchen, not a public. That's too bad. But yeah, no, I have, I think Adam asked the questions. We're looking at the parking waiver. I have no problem with that at all. So good.
I'm all set.
You're all set?
There was the question with regards to the dumpsters and the configuration is all set and satisfactory. I think parking-wise, we've seen there is ample parking in the town. It just may not be in front of where somebody wants to be. So they may have to walk a little further, but I don't have any issues, and, best of luck. And I love ramen, not gonna lie to you. So best of luck.
And I feel the same way, and I wish you luck. I think it's great. With the same things that everyone talked about. My only question is when you do the layout of the dumpsters, because it's so tight in there, I see that there are windows, and it might affect, people inside the other spaces possibly or not. Just make sure that there's an elevation or something of what's in the alley.
Yep.
But other than that, I feel the same comments as everyone. So we need to open it up for a public comment at this point. So I'm gonna to go through all the rules. And I know that we may have people on, I don't see any hands, and I'm not sure if there's anyone here, but as we open to public comment, I'd like to remind attendees of our ground rules for public hearings to ensure an accurate public record and to enable a fair platform to hear from our neighbors. Please state your name and address clearly for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes so we can hear from as many people as possible. If you have multiple points to make and need more time, we will genuinely attempt to return to you after others that have not spoken are given a chance to speak. Please address your comments through the chair. Simply saying that you agree with the previous speaker is a great way to have your voice heard while making time available to hear from our other neighbors. And unless a question can be easily answered by a board member, staff, and the applicant, we may ask staff to note your question so we can review, consider, and subsequently answer it. You can also provide comments in writing by email to planning@needhamma.gov. So with that, I open it up to public comment. Any comments? Are there any comments, Alex, online? I don't see. Everyone wants a ramen noodle place? Okay, well, with that, I move to close any final planning board member comments? Or no? With that, I move to close the hearing.
Second.
So Justin? Oh,
You moved-
I keep on.
I thought you moved, so
Yeah, you-
I seconded your move.
Oh, okay. So I moved it and Justin seconded it. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So
Just
the
the
motion,
condition as the condition based on what Adam was talking about and what Lee was talking about.
Right,
Well,
so
it's based
I'll
on those
draft a
conditions.
decision for your consideration at the next meeting to address the issue that we discussed relative to the dumpsters in particular,
great.
And the grease trap.
and the grease trap that will have to be internal to the building.
Okay,
We're
great.
just saying, it's going to be it's going to be conditional based on
Yes.
the
On what
building
we've
department,
discussed.
whatever.
Health
The details
department.
don't necessarily need to be ironed out, but.
And the fire department.
Okay, great. So the motion carries and good luck and
Let's go.
Thank you.
Looking for some tasty ramen.
I got the menu here, want to take a look at the menu?
Artie's not going back to
We'll
Somerville,
wait.
is what he's saying.
We'll wait.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. So the next, we have a second public hearing. This is the amendment to major project site plan review for Sweet Basil. And this is for, they have 11 year-round outdoor seats adjacent to the building with an additional waiver of 4 spaces and a parklet for 28 seats and 10 parking spaces, and that will need approval from the select board. Oh, do we need to wait till 7:20?
Nope. I
is
was
it
looking at the wrong,
7:20?
I was looking at the wrong, we have so many, we're good.
Okay. So they currently have a 52-seat restaurant with 1 takeout station and a waiver of 28 spaces, and they need a parking waiver from us for an additional 8 spaces for a total of 36 parking spaces. So, Dave, do you want to introduce yourself and,
My name's Dave Becker. I'm the chef owner at Sweet Basil on 942 Great Plain Avenue. And I was just hoping to do something similar to what we've been doing over COVID.
I move that we
Yes.
waive the reading of the notice.
Second.
great, so all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Please go on.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had a thought about those guys. I think the only thing Needham's missing now is barbecue. Like a good Blue Ribbon spot.
Barbecued ramen.
The guy who owns Blue Ribbon lives in Needham.
Yeah.
And why he doesn't have
right,
a
he
place in
does.
Needham, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've asked him many times, and he's like,
Do you want them to reconsider?
yeah. But I'm not sure if you're familiar with what it looked like before, but 2 of the parking spaces were surrounded by Jersey barriers, and then the sidewalk was, we kind of spilled over to where Little Spoon is now, so we won't have that. It'll only be three tables, which is,
Alex is putting it up.
yeah. And then, and I'd say like, if it gets a little chaotic because, on a hot night like tonight, there's probably gonna be a line for people getting Abbott's, and we'll go out and tell them all to like maintain their order, but go the other way. And they will, they'll all, like, everybody will like march the other way and flip. There might be like 40 people waiting. But I think we'll be having, I forget what they're called, but almost like velvet ropes to keep it separated, so it's not.
Retractable rails.
Yeah.
That you had in.
And I think we'll connect the planters, and I'd like to, just make it look really nice out there. And I think we'll be having less tables than we did, just like, I don't know, keep it civilized. Yeah.
Great.
Lee, I don't have a mic, so can you tell the board, just
specify that what is in front of them, which is the 11 seats
Oh,
and the parking waiver,
sure.
not the parklet.
Sure, just, yeah, that, what Alex said is the case. Your jurisdiction basically is just for the seats that are actually adjacent to the building, because that's sitting on private property, and the select board has jurisdiction over what is public. But the waiver on the parking needs to be granted to accommodate the seating that's anticipated, this coming through the Board of Selectmen. So to make the process smoother for him, we're rolling that all into one process, which is why you're seeing what's actually happening in the park itself. But you have no jurisdiction over the parklet.
Right, that will need approval from the select board. Yeah. So, and I will recognize the comments from the town entities. So police has no issue, building inspector has no issue, fire department has no issue. Board of Health has some items, including trash, pest control, and sanitary typical comments, storage of chairs and that. And then engineering has no issues. So with that, I'm just going to open it up for planning board questions. Start with Adam.
I have no comments. I know you've done this before. You're familiar with the health department requirements and so on, and I'm satisfied. I have no comment or question.
Any questions?
Just excited about
Oh, more seating?
more seating. Been to Sweet Basil many times, going back 20 so years ago, whenever it was, 24.
I've been there since March of 2000. That's when I
That's
started.
24, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
Tiny little nook.
Yeah.
Was it, well, you went into where, was it,
What's cooking?
What's Cooking,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, What's Cooking, yeah.
So my only question is, where are you storing it in the winter?
We just threw them out.
Really?
Yeah. So I have to, I'll buy them all new this time. We didn't have, yeah, so I think we had a health inspection and they're just like, what's up with this? We're like, it's not here. So I think that, I'll come up with a better plan. And I think,
Maybe you can donate, maybe donate.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all beaten up and like, I feel like, my plan is too, is that I've been kind of treating this like we're camping out a little bit because every year it's like, are we doing it again? And so we'll go on Wayfair and just piece it together. And so I think if it's more permanent, I'll make it feel more permanent. you know?
Yeah.
If I hold the James patio up to like the whole,
As your standard?
yeah, I feel like, you know, every time I go there, I shake my head like these guys.
And what about lighting? Do you provide lighting?
Yeah, I mean, there's also street lighting. It's not dim out there.
totally
but,
dark.
like, and then our front lights are there and new Christmas lights.
Those were my only questions. Paul, do you have any questions?
Well, it's not really a question for him, it's a question for Lee, because when I was looking at this, looking at the legal notice and the application and the draft decision, I get different numbers of seats.
The application changed from the time it was filed,
Yeah.
and then we wrote the legal notice, and then he amended the application. So the legal notice was written for more seats than are actually proposed on the final set of drawings that you
Right,
have.
he's requesting, the legal notice says 32 seats. And the decision says that you're asking for permission for 28 seats, is it?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct. Right.
okay. So it's okay that the legal notice has the wrong number?
Well, it has more than what you're going to be
more than
required.
reverse.
If
It
it
was
was
the
the
other
reverse,
direction.
I would say there's an issue, but because
Yeah, but it's less.
because he was reducing it, it was okay.
Okay. And the application says 39 seats, the 12 tables,
So I think 28 plus the 11.
28 plus the 11.
So
Okay.
28 in the parklet and then the 11 on the sidewalk.
Okay.
I think. I shouldn't.
Which is more
I
than the
have
32,
here-
which is in the notice.
32 is in the sketch.
32 is in the sketch.
I have here from when we reviewed it, Lee, that there was 11 year-round outdoor seats adjacent to the building with an additional waiver of 4 spaces, right?
Right.
And the original,
I'm so sorry. I got it wrong too. So there are eight tables with 4 seats at them.
So that's 32.
Yeah.
So in the sketch, there are
parklet.
7, and then a
7 tables.
36
I'm
by
sorry.
60 table is also in the
The
sketch.
parklet is 32.
well, the parklet has 28 seats and 10 parking spaces. And then, so I have here that,
I am so sorry for this
No,
confusion.
the
No, it's okay.
parklet has 32, because there's a tall table there, I think, with 4 seats, I think. It's like carrying on. It's
Well, the sketch is showing eight tables and 32 seats in the parklet.
Correct.
And then another 3 tables with 11 seats.
That's a tall table or something like that.
So you have 4
seats.
more, but there's 4 more, it's 36.
No, it's 32, that's eight tables.
Oh, that's the 8 tables,
Yeah, that's
okay,
8 tables,
okay.
Yeah, there's 7 of those.
I think as long as the notice
That's
is
11.
okay, there's not a legal issue and we can tailor the decision to
Right,
whatever the right numbers are.
right.
Based on the plan that's stamped here,
Yeah.
okay. So that was your question, Paul?
Yeah.
That's it, okay,
I
Justin?
just wanted to make sure that we didn't have a problem.
Well, we've changed it, yeah, we were changing it we changed it a couple of times since
Yeah, there's a
last
red
week.
line of it. It was corrected in the packet.
No, yeah, I've got
Parking
that.
relief is what, though, they're asking for?
Okay,
He's asking for the permission to have the 3 tables with 11 seats.
Okay, yeah.
right,
The parklet is not our jurisdiction.
Correct, but
no, the parklet's
just
not ours.
parking.
And the parking waiver,
based on that,
we
I
just need to make sure that we have the correct number.
I think it was for a waiver of an additional 4 parking spaces. It
Right.
has been requested
That's what I have
seasonally.
here, an additional waiver of 4 spaces.
And 10 for the outdoor, so the total parking waiver is 14.
Right.
Got it.
So as long as we've got the correct number in our decision, I mean, you're going to get a parking waiver because there's no parking.
And that,
But wait a
that should
second,
cover both,
But-
that covers both what he's asking for based on right in front, plus anticipating the select board will
Yeah.
approve the
Yes.
parklet, that'll be the parking relief. Got it.
but Lee, you mentioned that there was something related to the use that it only required 8.
The waiver is not, well, I guess it's confusing in the sense that the waiver that you're providing for the outdoor seating is not on the total seating capacity that's actually outside, because you were allowed to have free parking up to 30% of your restaurant capacity. So 30% of your restaurant capacity, you were able to put seats outside and not provide any parking. So that's like exempt. So that's how it's calculated.
To make it more complicated.
Make it more complicated.
So basically, we ended up with 8 spaces instead of 14. That's what you mentioned today,
That's right.
because of that exemption.
Because of that exemption, because you're allowed, you have this exemption, which is 30% of your 52 seats. You do not have to provide parking for those seats that are outside. That was the exemption. The reason he's here for a parking waiver is because he's asking for a number in excess of that.
Yep.
Right, okay. So with that, so Justin, are you all set? Okay, so we need to open up for public comment. Do I need to read this all over again? Is there anyone here in the audience or anyone online that like to speak? Because, so then probably shouldn't read it, right? I mean, is everyone okay?
Close the hearing.
Great.
Second.
So Paul moves to close the hearing, Justin second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? So great, thank you so
guys.
much.
Thanks a
Best of luck, thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Madam Chair, I move that we continue the hearing.
Oh, I'd like to maybe have you vote the decision for Sweet Basil tonight.
Oh,
Yeah, but shouldn't we do that after we have our hearings? Because it's already
We have
7:40.
another hearing,
Well, the next hearing, you're going to just continue. You're not going to open.
but shouldn't we finish that?
Sure.
Or do,
you know, Tim Sullivan is here on the MBTA. So, I don't want to hold
Sure.
up people who are here. We can discuss this after.
Oh, he has an appointment at 8.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this one, we're just gonna continue the third one, right?
Right.
So can we just do that and complete
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, let's do that, yeah.
Okay, so this is the third public hearing is a continuation of the public hearing for Blue on Highland from 6/4/24, which is going to design review and will be continued at the next meeting on July 11th at 7 PM. So is there a motion to continue the hearing?
so,
moved.
second.
Okay, so Artie and Adam, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, so the motion carries to continue to the next meeting. Okay, so those are the 3 public meetings.
Let's handle the A&R plan. Let's get that done.
And let's get the A&R plan, hold on.
I thought that was withdrawn.
Well, we have to accept the withdrawal. I move that we accept the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
Second.
Of the A&R plan.
So who moved it? Adam?
Adam
Paul
seconded.
moved it.
Yeah, you moved it and then there were 3
Adam-
seconds?
Adam
Adam seconded, okay. So, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that is the appointment. and go through. And so,
So do we now want to look at the decision for
Sweet Basil?
Sweet Basil?
Yes. So, pull it
How
up.
did this decision get drafted up for the same night of the hearing and the Noodle place was not?
Because it was already a use that was out there, and it was outdoor seating that we were kind of like implementing that would happen before, and we thought, and he.
There was a good
And it's
chance.
seasonal in
Yeah.
terms of
High
when he wants to put the
quality
chairs
buildings,
out there, and we were trying to do everything to help move it along quickly.
Good. So we need on page 2 for the evidence, the date of Tom Ryder's.
We have a red line version that put the date in.
I
Yeah.
don't have the red line version.
It's in the revised package. Are you looking at the latest packet?
I may not be.
Yeah, you gotta, you gotta look at the packet at 6:55.
No, this is actually,
A couple of them came in really.
know, I
So
know.
Lee,
Yeah, we got a couple of new things while I was on the Mass Pike.
Were you reading as you were driving, Paul?
No, I just was noticing that I had an email.
how did you notice that you had, do you have Apple CarPlay?
With additional attachments to review.
We're just worried about you,
Yeah,
Paul.
we're
No,
greatly
I'm not,
concerned.
it's
the age
just
thing.
frustrating to have things come in.
We shouldn't, yeah.
At such a late.
I know, I wish we could have, the A&R issue was difficult to resolve, and the landscaping and the subdivision was all happening.
Needless to say, I have not.
Have done tonight.
And then we need to read it.
We've
I was
been
driving
working on
also.
that really hard.
So any questions on the decision?
3.1. Specify here what the total number of the petitioner is shown on
I call out and I don't know what the select board is going to do. I mean, we know we're approving 11 spaces. We know that he's proposing 28 outside, but that's not our permit.
right.
That's
Right,
why.
so the 4 on the sidewalk, we're not doing anything on the street. Right?
That's right.
Just the parking.
I just want to, I would just think to
We're only approving the
specify.
11 seats outside.
Right.
We're
that are right
approving
up
11
against
seats,
the-
but we're also giving a parking
Parking
waiver.
waiver, yeah.
And I think that the language, because our decision that we're going to vote, because I'm going to read the
Exactly.
decision for the vote, is that we grant, where does it say it?
Well, I guess we can grant the waiver for what's required, the maximum,
That's
which is
right.
basically, I can add that language, which was kind of in section 1.4, which was that we're granting a waiver of really a total of 8 parking spaces, because it's the 4
You need to
plus the 10, but then it has to be adjusted because of the 30%, so it's
So
really 8.
So that you need to change the 1.4, the red, where you've highlighted in red, right?
Right, so I can specify that we're granting, we're granting a waiver of, the 4 parking spaces for the 11 seats adjacent to the building and 10 for the outdoor spaces, and with the 30% adjustment in the bylaw, the total number that's required is actually 8.
You mean put that in 3.1, you mean?
Yes, put that kind of language in 3.1, so it's clear the nature of the waiver that's been granted. Or I can just say that a parking waiver of 8 parking spaces has been granted in accordance with section 1.4.
So Lee, basically what we're saying is that if the select board approves those spaces outside, that the parking waiver has already been approved.
It's already been approved, and they're limited basically to 28 seats. It can't go beyond the 28.
Okay. I feel comfortable with that. Is anyone uncomfortable with that?
I think that language is more clear.
Are you okay with that approach? Just a reference
Okay, I've
back to
got it.
section
I've
1.4?
got it. Okay, so 18 seats are automatically granted under section 6.9. And so And so a waiver is requested for the remaining 10 outdoor seasonal seats, which
Actually-
requires,
11.
11, and it requires 4 parking spaces additional, and then the other 4 for the additional waiver if the select board approves it. It's really confusing, to tell you the truth, but.
I mean, it's not that confusing. One is a function of private property and the other is a function of public property.
Right, but it's the interior versus exterior seating and the loophole
Oh,
of
the total of.
reducing
In
it,
in this particular
right?
approval, it is confusing, I'll grant you.
But you're right, it's public versus private. Paul seems concerned.
no, I'm just confused. All the numbers are, I'm looking
Well,
at
you
all the
s-
language.
and you saw, like,
in
how many
section
times I-
1.4, and
Yeah.
it's just,
I have a question about 3.2. The second sentence reads, "The petitioner shall accomplish this relating to removing furniture during a snow event," and who's going to be outdoor dining during a snow event, "by relocation that extends, the furniture that extends beyond the private property line, etc." Wouldn't that be a condition that the select board would require and not us, because it's governing public property then and not private property?
No, because it's impacting the seats, the 11 seats that are basically on the sidewalk. And this was a condition that
But it says beyond the
DPW
private
requested,
property.
we have a similar condition for, what's the name of the,
For French press?
French press. It's the same condition we have for French press.
Even though it extends beyond the private property line?
Yes,
Because the seats are actually straddle the property line, because if you look at
Right.
the map, you'll actually see it goes right down the middle of the seats, so technically 2 of them are in the public right away and 2 of them are on private
Is
property.
that the reason why?
that was the reason why DPW requested it for French press, and they requested it in this case. And that was the reason, was,
I understand the rationale, I just don't know if if the select board is the right authority for that, because it's in public property and not private property.
well, it's both of us, actually. I would think that the select board would also have to approve the 11 seats if they're straddling onto the sidewalk.
And this specific condition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is, so we should probably inform the select board's office that they may require a condition, a similar condition.
we'll inform them of it.
Yeah.
And I would imagine DPW, they'll be looking for comments from DPW on the permit when it's in front of them.
Yeah, I see what Adam's saying, though, about very specifically for this 3.2. It is very specifically talking about the seats when they're in the public.
But they are the seats, they are the 11
I
seats
know.
that are within our
I know,
jurisdiction,
but
so
then-
we have
No, I
to,
get it, but he's just saying, in this particular case, it is reference a very specific area, the
Yeah.
public area. Even though it's the seats that we're talking about, it is in the public area. So I get why Adam's bringing it.
yeah.
So Lee, you will
I'll
discuss.
follow up
you'll
with,
follow up.
we're working with, Alex is working with Miles and coordinating the permitting on this. So
Okay.
she'll follow up.
Okay. Satisfied?
That's reasonable, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So, any other comments? So you're going to read the, okay.
There are no more comments? I move that we grant the requested major project site plan review special permit amendment under section 7.4 of the bylaw. And I move that we grant the requested special permit amendment to major project site plan review special permit number 2005-8, section 4.2. And I move that we grant the requested special permit amendment under section 5.1.1.6 to waive strict adherence with the requirements of section 5.1.2 and 5.1.3 of the bylaw, which deals with required parking and the parking plan and design requirements, subject to and with the benefit of the plan modifications, conditions, and limitations as set forth in our decision.
Second.
So motion by Paul, second by Adam. Any questions? So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries.
And I move that we adopt the decision as drafted with the red line changes that were in our packet and with the further changes that we discussed this evening.
So moved.
So Paul made the motion and already seconded. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, great, the motion carries unanimously. So anything else related to this, or,
No, that's done, we're
so
done
the
now.
decision is closed?
I will pass the decision down for you to sign it, so we can get it recorded.
And they can put their seats out.
We need to have a good recycling program, is what we,
Yeah, use furniture.
use furniture,
Use
yeah.
furniture. Yeah, it seems.
Okay, great, so,
It's 10 minutes before 8, but I would probably, if,
the appointment is at 8, right?
and I would probably, if everyone's available to do it now, I don't see a reason why.
But it's not a public hearing, we don't.
No, exactly.
Okay.
Lee, I
So-
just want to mention that in the decision for Sweet Basil,
Yeah,
you say that Natasha opened the hearing at 7 o'clock. Change that to 7:30.
right, and I'm also going to change the location of the meeting.
Yeah, good.
We're no longer where we were when we drafted it.
Right,
Currently here.
and for all the other
call.
decision, when you do the draft of the other decisions, right, you'll include that as well, Lee? Lee?
Yes.
Sorry, okay, thank you, I just want to make sure,
Yeah, we'll have the location right.
okay. Okay, so this is. Okay. So the next one is the appointment for the discussion of Cone, the recommended MBTA compliance zoning at 100 West Street. Cone is recommended zoning for 100 West Street for 3 stories of FAR and for an FAR of 1 in the base plan and 4 stories and 1.3 with a special permit. So Tim Sullivan, is Tim Sullivan here to discuss the zoning? Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. Tim Sullivan, for the record, Gold Citizen Stores. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Well Tower of 100 West Street. Katie Hogan from Well Tower is also here virtually, so as
Do you
well.
want to bring her
Yeah,
in?
do we want to bring her in?
Sure. Squeaky.
Okay, I think
Okay.
I see her.
Great.
Okay, great.
So I think the board is generally familiar with the HONE process, and the quite extensive efforts that HONE took to propose zoning for the town to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. So by way of process, that's with the state for their review and comment. 100 West is part of that zoning. And so really here tonight to try to be a bit proactive before this zoning comes back to the planning board as part of the town meeting process. So this has been a tricky site, as this board knows, and HONE has spent a lot of time, and we're excited about the opportunity of residential. And so when HONE finished the process, we thought it would be prudent as a property owner to look at the zoning and see if what sort of HONE is assuming for the site is feasible by way of development. Hard to do that when you don't have a project. So what we did is we asked an architect that works with Well Tower to look at it and say, here are the zoning parameters that the town's put forth. Here are the assumptions. 187 units is what the HONE assumes for compliance. Does that work? And so good news is it largely does. And so we had one comment in the sense of one of the zoning parameters doesn't line up to the other, and then maybe just a few suggestions. And I know we're early, long process, but we want to start the conversation. So when you look at the site and you look at developing a 3-story building for residential in line with the height that's required, the open space that's required, complying with the setback, to yield 187 units, the FAR needs to be 1.3, not 1.0. That's largely a function of the residential building and the hallways and the elevator cores and all the things, parking garage, that include that are included in FAR but don't yield units. So there's a corresponding adjustment on the special permit side as well. So to get effectively the comment that we have and that we'd like the board to consider when they look at the zoning is to make the FAR 1.3 and exclude parking garages as it's currently excluded in the Avery Square overlay, and make the fourth story 1.7. So the same adjustment to both the 3-story plan and the 4-story plan. The other comment that we would offer is that with respect to the way the zoning is set up to allow a 4th story, there's sort of a minimum threshold that if you're going to do a 4th story, it has to either be set back 12 feet or peaked to a certain degree. Our suggestion is rather than making that, we totally appreciate the desire to soften the massing of the 4th floor. But our suggestion would be to do that, maybe rather than making it a hard and fast minimum requirement to qualify, that it be incorporated as like a design standard so that this board, when working with an applicant on a 4th story, could look at other ways that you might be able to soften architecturally the massing of that 4th story. The only other thing I would say is similarly, it may be worth considering the maximum setback on Highland. Like I said, that's something we can comply with, but the board may want to allow flexibility for an applicant to consider kind of like open spaces along Highland. So maybe that could be, rather than a hard and fast maximum. I know, Lee, we didn't talk about this, but this is something that we talked about as one other thing that, that might be something that the applicant and the board want to have some flexibility on. So the FAR is the big one. I think that, the Hone assumption of units happens to be sort of where it makes sense to develop this site for residential, considering the cost of raising the existing building, doing development, all of that stuff. So it's not, put plainly, it's not economically feasible unless you're getting at least 185 units. So that comment on the FAR is critical and something the others are suggestions we think would be helpful. We think they'd work for the property owner in the town, so we wanted to offer them. So that's why I'm here. And so we just wanted to raise this early. The process will be obviously whatever the MBTA, whatever the state comes back with for comments will have to be considered as well. But
Madam Chair?
Yeah, do you want to start?
So I recall from the last meeting of Hone that included, it was a joint meeting as well with the planning board and the finance committee and the select board. And I remember distinctly the report that the consultant that the town had hired of all the different districts related to the MBTA compliance. This was actually the one district that they singled out as being unlikely to be developed. And I think it's probably, the single site that actually seems to be a viable site for redevelopment by, it seems like, although we understand the history, a ready and willing, owner who's looking to move to redevelop the site. And the town also wants the site to be redeveloped. It's been sitting vacant and, for countless years now, 7 years, 6 years.
That's
And-
not countless.
What's that?
If it's
You're right.
60
I appreciate the precision, Paul. I sit corrected. So for countable years, of which there are many, and I think that a greater density would make for, it's a marginal increase with, I think, with impacts that in that area can be absorbed, that can be, and we'll have a conversation if through a site plan process, if a special permit comes, it'll be a special permit. And, I think otherwise, you're looking at it by right. I think that there are ways to mitigate whatever the incremental impact is. Do you have a sense that there's a preference for the special permit route over the?
I think it's, I think that it's hard to say. No, I don't, I guess is the candid answer right now as I sit here. I would say it would probably be likely, I would think, that a special permit. But we really focused on also just making sure that what the town's compliance assumption is.
Right, for by
is
right.
yielded, and that's where it doesn't line up either, you know?
Right.
So that was important because you're right, the propensity for change model that Hone looked at said it wouldn't be developed. It's right on the cusp. So that's why I say a special permit probably would be likely, but I don't know. I mean, that's the honest answer.
Lee, if an application, if the property owner pursued redevelopment, given the size of it, they'd have to come to us for site plan, correct?
Well,
Modified site plan to be conforming with the MBTA compliance, but,
it would be a site plan under the MBTA Communities Act, and it would be a site plan under those revised site plan rules.
right. So I think that there is an opportunity under both a by right scenario and a special permit scenario where we can consider those impacts as a result of, the increased FAR both by right and by special permit. I think that would be a benefit. I think it would activate the area as independent living. There's probably some preference for senior housing because the Center for the Heights is there, and but that's up for the
I don't
for the
think we
market
can
to decide.
mandate.
No.
I don't think we can mandate that.
I'm not. I just know that there had been in the past,
Right.
preference for that, and now it's a new kick at the can, and there is a strong demand for multifamily housing. It's right at the Needham Center station. There are a lot of amenities right in the area, so I think it's right for all kinds of different demographics. When you just mentioned the setback, a modification of the setback, are you thinking for the potential to activate like the first floor or to activate certain part of the street level? Or are you thinking of reducing the setback on the street?
No, increasing it.
So there's a maximum. So I think it's 15 feet. I don't.
It's 15
15
feet
feet.
in that district.
Yeah, and so the only thought there is that means, the building can't be more than 15 feet off the property line.
Right.
Which is effectively similar condition to what it is today. Our thought is there may be, as you get into it, architects may come up with better, smarter ideas about ways to design that. So maybe there should be some flexibility on that 15 feet if there was open space or
I see.
building split into two or, something like that.
I see.
Can I add, because I haven't been following the whole process all that closely, and you were on the committee. You were on
I
the.
have,
Why-
I'm on the committee, but
But he's been following.
There
it
are,
closely, too.
there's a chart here with 1, 2, 3, 4, with 6 districts.
Right.
And there's a minimum front setback for all 6 districts, but there's only one district that has a maximum setback. Why is there even a maximum setback for that district?
Because that district right now has a maximum setback. At the time the Avery Square district zoning was done,
Back in the early 90s, there was a maximum setback put there. And the reason was they wanted to ensure that the buildings were on the street edge and they provided a pedestrian corridor and that they weren't set back far from the street. They wanted to make sure that they weren't too far off of Highland Avenue. That was what the
was an
planning, and that's what the
overlay.
goals were
Right.
at the time for Avery Square, that you wanted to maintain those buildings right on the street edge.
The overlay was a lot more.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And the overlay basically grabs those requirements.
The overlay has it
And
as
so
well.
I think the philosophy was that the dimensional framework that existed in Avery Square currently should be retained. And that's why those dimensions are the same as what exists in the underlying districts.
Is your client talking about rehabbing the current building?
No.
Leaving-
No.
So he's talking about
Yes.
taking down the building and rebuilding completely?
Yeah. The probably not the right term, but the nursing home aspect, it doesn't work for residential.
Right.
Yeah.
And we still want to keep a maximum setback for that building? But your client has no problem with the maximum setback?
I think we don't. I think we would suggest that it might be helpful when we get to the zoning to offer some flexibility there if there's things, in other words, if there's things that the board and the applicant want to do that we think would be a better idea for that streetscape,
That's why they're bringing it
we
up.
don't want to, like, for know,
So
close
you could do
that
something where you
opportunity
could
off.
maybe increase it by, through a special permit. I mean, so you could have the rule and then.
So that we can review it.
Under certain circumstances, by special permit, modify it.
And the thing with Hone is that everything is by right in this case.
Oh, yeah, no, that's.
So if we do it by
that's the
special permit,
statute.
then we can review it a little more. But mostly, it's almost like the Dover Amendment, like there you can do some minor things, but you really can't change anything. So
Yeah.
that would probably be by special permit, if they have something very specific.
Well,
And the fourth floor is by special permit.
when I first read the statute, but that was when it first came out, I got the impression that there wasn't really room for special permit.
But you can leave a
If it goes
maximum.
beyond, if it goes beyond, right?
But then, but I think under the law, I mean, you're able to accomplish by right.
Yeah.
What the by right calculation is going to give you those units.
Yeah.
And if they choose to do something
what we
else,
need to
then
do.
then that's their
FAR,
option.
Which is what they just did. So their biggest concern is the FAR, because if they can't get the number of units, A, they can't build it.
Where's the FAR in the?
It's 1.0.
One.
It's 1.0 for.
It's on
No,
page
no, where-
5.
it's on page 5?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So in A1, it's .5.
Oh, no, wait, second, it's on page.
I got it.
Okay, you got it,
Yeah,
page
yeah,
6,
yeah.
actually, sorry.
So actually, the other areas have even lower FAR.
Right,
depends
because
on the area.
we were using the existing zoning framework as our model.
Right.
The only thing I would say, Paul, is that it's kind of a.
I'm questioning whether even these numbers for all these districts are so low.
Well, that was the base plan. The base plan I think the philosophy was that the base plan was kind of following the framework of the existing zoning.
Would
with
give us the number of
And the
units that
neighborhood.
Give us
the
the number of
statute would
units, but would
require.
change it from a special permit process to an as-of-right process and introduce the use in some districts where it wasn't currently allowed, and that
I mean,
the
I would-
neighborhood plan
increased it.
actually,
I would have no problem with increasing these FARs by a reasonable number so that it would accomplish the
actually
purpose.
works.
Well, I mean, certainly different parts of the neighborhood, I mean, Indian Heights are offered different possibilities or different levels of FAR. And in this particular case, I mean, this building is it's great that you're coming back here, because as you know, the town, at least I believe the town is very much wants, is looking for housing there, and now it looks like you guys are really wanting to do something.
Yep.
So that's great.
Yep.
And finding a way, and you're talking about architecturally, if you need a bigger setback, maximum setback, well, maybe that works. And maybe that's necessary from an architectural standpoint. Again, here's the architectural visuals of it, but here's, we're looking for housing also. And I think that's what your goal is. We want the housing, but you also want something that looks good. And if a little bit of setback makes it look better, then I'm certainly good with that. Personally, I'm good with that.
And the increased FAR.
Your client-
And the increased FAR, as far, we need something, we want some housing, has to be reasonable in size. The height, you're looking at a height, possibly softening or not softening, or whatever's going on with that, but we need the housing, but we want it to be architecturally fitting into the area. Who can say no to that? I mean, it's something we have to talk about.
And it sounds like your client has determined that in order to make this lot
Yeah.
work, to get 185, 187 units, going to need a fourth story.
Or increase the FAR to
Increase the FAR,
1.3.
yeah.
So 3
Or
stories at
both?
1.3 or
No,
4
it's-
stories at
It's
1.7.
one of the
So-
same thing.
Oh,
The 3 stories at 187 that's the as of right base compliance. That's what
That's
the
the
town
base.
is getting credit for complying with the MBTA.
right.
And that would be the 1.3 FAR that I'm talking about.
Right.
There's an opportunity to request a special permit for the fourth
the
floor.
4
Total
stories.
discretionary, doesn't count towards your MBTA compliance.
Got it.
How many units
that
would you get
would
with
be-
The
that?
first 3 stories would comply with the MBTA requirements.
Yes,
And then
and if
your
we wanted to
client
do
is
more, we'd have
saying,
to
we
come to
might
you."
be able to put in more units.
With
Give us a
1.7.
fourth story.
Yeah.
We make a higher profit and you get more residential units.
With 1.7
But
FAR.
if we would come to the board for the special permit,
And do you see,
would be in site plan review on the
do you see a problem with like some version of a setback of the fourth floor, instead of accommodating what you want to do? What do you guys want?
We don't see a problem with it.
Yeah,
We just
okay.
want to, we think it would be beneficial for both of us to be more flexible with it, because this is just sort of, you can't ask for the special permit unless you're either 12 feet back or peaked to a certain degree. We're just saying it should be between the board and the applicant to come up with something that works. And maybe one of those is the option, may very well be, you know.
And this is something that we talked about, design review. We need to figure out how to create design standards,
Well,
right?
yes, well, the design standards that we ended up imposing, the setback that you're talking about and the angle are
Right.
coming out of the zoning, what was decided for Chestnut Street corridor and the center. So these standards are basically the same standards that Needham Center has and the Chestnut Street corridor has.
I mean,
Which
this
is why the
is-
building that was done on Dedham Avenue at the corner is done that way on the four-story. That's coming out of that's coming out of those
I
rules.
mean, opposite First Parish Church, Unitarian Church.
Right,
that- Yeah, yeah,
right.
because I mean, this with something that's almost entirely housing, that potentially has different design, a little different design criteria for possibly than the Chestnut Street corridor, which is possibly in business on the first one and so forth. So there can be some correlation of complements going on, but it's also a different animal.
Right.
I think there are unique market conditions, looking at it, you know, as a broker, there are unique conditions at that site than there are at one end of Chestnut Street versus this, you know, the center of town. So I do think that makes sense.
We also, sorry, Adam, we also haven't had much development, and I'm wondering if, you know, how much of it is some of the criteria that we have
The
imposed
dimensional
before.
regulations.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
And I think we would keep it, it would just supplement it, you know.
Right.
Or such other architectural means as the board determines, or something like that.
Right,
So that
right.
it's rather than you know, you can only do one of these two things.
Well, we certainly want something in writing, so and no one's surprised, right, as far as what's going on. But it's clear that you want to do something. I think, you know, we want to do something.
Sorry, I interrupted, Adam. I don't know if you had anything else?
I wanted to understand the roof adjustment. Is it the height and so on? Can you explain that a little
So
bit?
no, we're not proposing any change to the height that Hone came up with
Right.
in any scenario. Or it's just that the way it's set up, that if you ask for a special permit for the fourth floor, it's only allowed if that fourth floor is either set back 12 feet from, in a flat roof scenario, 12 feet from the facade, or peaked at some number of degrees that I'm not remembering. So, and that may very well be what ends up happening. But if in the process, you know, the board and the applicant think, and the applicant's architect think, maybe there's something different we could do, and, you know, maybe it doesn't step back here and it step backs here more, you know, that, you know, is more efficient as far as how the units line up in the building, and so, we just want flexibility that way. So it's not a change to the overall height.
see.
It's just how that's
How the
really
tectonics
intended.
of it
Yeah.
are at the upper level?
Yeah, yeah.
You have to explain what the tectonics are. but enough.
The way it's shaped.
So I think that's a reasonable thing. Ultimately, you're looking to achieve the municipal goals, what it sounds like, and have some flexibility in the way in which that's done. So I think that seems to be a reasonable approach, and there may be some other parts to the Hone proposal for zoning recommendations that we may also want to modify as well, not to restrict or reduce or jeopardize compliance based on what the state says, and yet, to the same extent, try to satisfy, here we have a very specific scenario where there is a property that's ripe for redevelopment, and I think there are unique conditions here.
I think this particular one has unique conditions because it's kind of standalone, let's say. I mean, it has a couple of lots that are adjacent, right, that's broken up, but it's really one block, where in all the other areas, it was divided up into many, many blocks, so the decision was more kind of overall, overarching, so this one does have more opportunity. One question for you is that you have 187 units, but what's the makeup of the units? Are they?
We won't know really until we design it. I mean, this was sort of more like an architect looking at like a standard conceptual residential.
Right.
If you went to fourth and went, if
We
you
can
went,
certainly answer that question at some point, but not as I sit here right now.
if you went to a fourth floor, Would it still be 87? Would it be added, would it be 87, you'd expanding some of it to be larger? Would it be greater than 187, for example?
It would be greater. I don't know
The 1.7
exactly. Yeah,
FAR.
yeah,
However many more they could fit there, depending
Well, I
on
was
the
Yeah,
thinking you
which
make-
is sort of
you
that-
make Some penthouse in the, some become penthouse or something like that.
Yeah.
the fourth floor,
yes, that
Which
was,
is
yeah, you might,
more, a lot more square footage per unit. so.
yeah. I think the mix between studios and 1 beds and 2 beds and 3 beds will really sort of depend on the market and,
Probably about 50 more units or so, because if you have 62 per floor right now at 187 of 3 floors, and you add another floor, less than 62, it'll probably be about 50 more or something.
sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. And then my other question, I think some of my questions were the same. Is there questions? Where did we have the workforce housing incentive? Was that for this? I can't remember.
I think it ended up in the neighborhood plan for
neighborhood.
It's in the
this.
neighborhood
For
plan.
this particular site, right?
Might have been more than
I should
just
remember
this,
this
but I
off the
think for
top,
this as well.
top of my
Yeah.
head, and I don't.
Yeah, I think it was
I
to
mean-
make the fourth floor maybe as of right if you did that workforce housing,
That's
is my
where we,
recollection. Okay.
yeah. Justin, do you have any questions?
I don't. I do, as we get into.
No,
you
it
know,
wasn't in this district.
Okay, who's in the adjacent?
Well, first, I mean, it was great that I know you worked on the Hone, and actually kind of keeping this its own zone is actually really helpful in this situation, especially with, as we look to make tweaks. I think that, generally I would be supportive of, as we get into these discussions to increase the FAR. And, because of, I think that it is important that, we work with a developer to try to bring, accessibility in. I think this is, I'm generally supportive of that. Obviously, the devil's in the details, and, that will, but yeah, no, I'm definitely, and also some of the other, even what you had mentioned about the setback, and taking a look at that, I think that there are some outside design elements that can be done that, perhaps we can modify, as we go forward. So I'm supportive. No direct questions.
All right, Paul, any other questions?
No, I just think that it's great that we have a developer who's looking at Hone and saying, hey, this makes sense for our parcel.
I mean, given its location, this could be a real model for the state generally, not just Needham, honestly.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
one last
Looking at the
question.
MBTA and
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
This is.
The MBTA doesn't have a requirement for affordable housing, right? The town the town, what did you recommend for affordable housing, separate from the workforce housing, 12.5%?
Yes, and we're meeting it, I think, right?
Through the proposed zoning, that's right. Does the calculation of market feasibility factor in, the 12.5% would have to be, affordable?
Yes, and the MBTA does have a cap.
Right,
Yeah,
it does, that's
and I
right.
think that the town did the feasibility study to justify
Exactly.
the 12.5. Yeah,
Exactly.
that is factored in, yes.
So
In other words, we are aware of that
as
requirement. Yeah.
as you contemplated
You're
Yes.
modeling.
modifying the zoning, the dimensional regulations.
Yep. Yep.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Okay, so next steps would be we're waiting for MBTA.
We're waiting for comments from the state, which are due back by August, the drop dead date is the beginning of August. And the zoning has also gone to the AG's office, and they had promised us the comments sometime within the month, so.
Earlier.
I haven't received their comments, but they're not looking at the model results. They're looking at the zoning itself and making sure we're not doing something in our underlying zoning that's going to frustrate what's trying to be accomplished in the overlay.
Okay. So then, once we get all these comments, and then with reviewing the comments that you gave us, then we will start reviewing, right,
I would-
the final zoning?
Although I think we might want to consider, and if they have a proposal now about changes, we might want to have them come back and talk to us about the specific language they would like to see changed as it relates to them.
Okay.
So we have that as we're moving forward, and we've kind of,
We're already
check-
proactive, is
Yeah,
what
we're
you're saying.
proactive, and we check that box.
I think what we talked about at the joint meeting was if we wait for the board to think through and start the process of reviewing the zoning, we're going to run afoul of the timeline. So I think, as I mentioned, I think at that joint meeting, it behooves this board to get on the planning calendar now to consider this with any specific zoning language that you may have, and to also immediately consider other, any other modifications to other districts, because we won't be able to do that later.
Problem is the modifications to the other districts may not meet the model, right? So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? So,
Yeah, I think, we have a property here that,
I
we
understand.
certainly want to accomplish and move forward in a way that's going to be productive for everybody. So I think we should understand better the changes they want.
Yes.
And I
'Cause
agree
they're
with
going to do
that,
nothing
yeah.
but actually increase the numbers that are coming out of the model, right? But in terms of the other changes, I would be reluctant to start fiddling with that, given the modeling that's been sent to the state, and I would be waiting, I think, for what the state's basically saying are the changes we're going to need.
Plus, this is, I'm not gonna say given, but this is in front of us. Again, this is in front of us. This is something the developer is looking to do, wants to do. We need to talk about it, what we have to do to accomplish that, for our goal and for yours as well. It's something that we can do. We know there's gonna be an outcome. The other ones, at some point, talk about it. But this is a necessity now, in my opinion, to talk about this.
I can submit a letter with some I think the good news out of this is the zoning was really good. I mean, Hone did a great job. So I think these are tweaks that I can submit. I can send a red line to the board, to you, Lee, and we can
that would
talk
be
about them in a
great.
meeting.
Yeah.
That would have an effect on the number of units. It would raise it nominally, but it would raise it. Does that have to be rechecked by the state?
no, because it's increasing it
Well,
versus
I mean,
decreasing.
if,
It wouldn't raise the base compliance, it would meet the base compliance.
Because it's the same number of units?
Yep.
I see.
Yep, and then anything you do under the special permit would raise it, but that's outside of the
Exactly.
compliance
That's outside
model.
of
Yeah.
MCA.
I just wanted to make that distinction in the record.
well, I think it would change the number under the state's model, because the state's basically not modeling it the way he's modeling it with hallways. I mean, the state has a model, and they're just applying it
They have
on
an
the square
equation,
footage.
kind of,
And
yeah.
they're calculating the square footage of the building, and they're dividing it by 1,000 square feet, and that's how many units you get. And so that's how they're calculating it under their model, so.
But that 1,000 square feet,
But if he has hallways and 2 bedrooms or bigger units, it's going to skew the result, but the state isn't looking at it in terms of that level of detail. So if we increase the FAR on the base, it's going to give you a bigger box, right? And it's going to increase the state's model calculation. So,
It'd be better is what. is
well,
what- yeah.
it'll make it better.
right.
Right, but we'd need to get that final calculation for the,
Well, whatever
able to-
changes, I think,
We need to make-
if we
right.
make changes to the zoning beyond what the state has already seen, we'll have to, run it, well, we're making
have to run
arrangements to
it,
use
right.
RKG to run the model again, to make any refinements would have to come out of that, but,
okay.
Madam
which is
Chair,
why I think I think it behooves us to kind of stay within the framework of what Home has already done and we've modeled and we're sure of, and then this is a property that's kind of an anomaly that we want to make sure we cover and move forward.
And then there's some areas that we were going to look at later on, like the Hersey area and other areas that we had looked at, that we would
And there-
look at separately as a planning board.
In addition to the other
In addition.
recommendations.
Right.
yes, so Madam Chair, so before we actually, really take a serious conversation of are we increasing the FAR, what are we doing? It would be nice to see, what are we talking about? Visually, what are we talking about? I know we're talking about the necessity to do it, but what does that mean? Visually, what is that looking like on the property? I'm not saying go through a whole architectural design, but what are we actually talking about visually taking up the property for what we need, for what we're voting on, what we're trying to not vote on, but what we're trying to rewrite in there. So we have to have some idea what why we're rewriting it, or what we're rewriting to.
Although we already said, like, there's
Yeah.
a certain amount that can occupy the site,
Yeah,
there's
no.
a certain, so you already have rules.
Well, we have rules, but they want to increase the FAR. You want to increase the FAR.
But we're not, so I would answer that a couple ways. I would say we're not increasing or decreasing, we're not increasing the allowable height or decreasing the setbacks, or decreasing the amount of open space. There's a significant, the Hone built in a significant side setback that results in a significant amount of open space. All of those things say the same. I think unlike most sites in Hone, maybe unlike all the sites in Hone, this site, you actually sort of have a model on it. You've got a building that's of similar scale. I mean, is it the exact same? No, but it's a very similar scale. So I think really what we're saying is that, you know, the FAR just doesn't line up to the other requirements that Hone set. So it won't really be until there is a building that we can review that with the planning board through site plan approval and special permit. But I think unlike any other site in town, people can go out there and say, okay, that's sort of generally the density that we're talking about.
Okay, it's just that you're looking to increase the FAR, so again, what you're saying is you want the math to line up.
Yes, exactly
What you're
right.
talking about.
Exactly right.
But
Right.
all the requirements are already there.
Yes.
Except for the FAR is too low to achieve the number of units.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Is everyone all set?
Yeah,
Move
sounds
forward.
good.
Thanks for the time.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you very
So we'll
much.
submit, good to see you. We'll submit a letter with the red line.
Thank you very much.
Sounds good, thank you.
Glad you know.
Great. Okay, so the next item
So next item, 920.
is, yes. So it's the request to review and approve landscaping plan of the
Right.
subdivision at 920 South Street.
Chair, I think this is going to be quite a discussion. Can we take a small break, small bathroom break?
Sure, let's take a 5-minute break. What time does it say? 8:27, so,
8:27, yeah, 8:28 right now.
so 8:35?
Yep, I'm just,
Okay.
right back.
Amy?
Oh, this is for the coffee that she didn't get me. I was supposed to get my iced coffee and I didn't get it. Monitors, you can't see 8:30.
We all set?
Yeah, I think we're all set. Do we need to wait till 35? No. No, we can start. Okay, so,
Go back.
okay, so now we're moving on to requesting to review and approve landscaping plan and subdivision documents for 920 South Street. And so at the last meeting, thank you for coming up. At the last meeting, the landscape plan was to go to the Ed Olson, the Superintendent of Parks and Forestry, for approval of the landscape plans and plantings. And we're here to review the landscape plan with Ed's comments, which needs to be approved before any further work continues on the site, right, Lee? So we received correspondence at 5:55 or whatever, at the last minute.
5:58.
5:58 to be exact.
Religiously for the last week.
So would you like to read it, just because we just received it?
Sure. So Ed Olson, who's head of Parks and Forestry for Needham, wrote an email to you at 5:58 today, and it begins, "Good evening. Over the past week, I've had several phone conversations and emails with Sergey, resident of 31 Morant Drive, as well as Brian, owner and developer of the two-lot subdivision located at 920 South Street. There has been a lot of discussion for many months regarding the required tree planting buffer area. Brian and Sergey seemingly were working together on a mutually agreeable solution. However, recently these continued talks and agreements regarding a tree buffer broke down, and I was asked to intervene. The good thing is that much of the prep work has already been done. Sergey had really taken the lead on designing and planning for a mutually beneficial tree buffer that they could enjoy for the future, together coming forward as neighbors. I commend them both for their efforts and know that these conversations, especially regarding change and new construction, can be very difficult as well as emotional at times. At the most recent planning board meeting, a plan was presented and returned for further amendments. The main argument was that one species presented in a single row would not suffice, for the proposed spacing would not fully enclose this open space as a true and total screen. As mentioned, since that meeting, this plan had some refinements suggested, including adding one additional tree species. This not only adds in the aesthetics, but also by adding some diversity, this will increase the value of the screen for many different reasons. One particular and very important reason is for the future pest considerations. Monostands or stands of one variety of tree or plant material can be devastated if attacked by a specific pest. Adding some diversity is a smart thing and one that was discussed apparently in earlier conversations. Therefore, I am in support of the most recent recommendations from Sergey as presented. This being a single row of trees consisting of alternating two species, varieties of pine and spruce trees. My final recommendation, after listening to both sides of this ongoing case, would be the following. One single row of trees, alternate varieties of pine and spruce trees, and he delineates the specific species. Spacing of 6 feet on center. Total amount of trees, 13 pine and 12 Norway spruce. The pine will flank either end of the buffer strip, and spacing would allow for each to maximize their full growth potential. Requiring a certified arborist to ensure the planting of trees is done following BMPs. I understand again that these matters are difficult. I do not enjoy having to get involved with these matters for reasons aforementioned. However, the world is full of problems, and unfortunately, I'm in the business of finding solutions. I hope this matter can be resolved tonight for the mutual benefit of both parties. Sincerely, Ed Olson.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that Ed Olson gave a proposal that seems that he feels confident will create a buffer between where it was allocated, right? And so it's hard, we need to discuss as planning board members if that is sufficient for the approval of the plan. Is that correct, Lee?
Yes.
Before we go there, I actually, although I want to come back to it because it's obviously a significant, element. Did we, I think I asked you and Alex to send a copy of the original, was there an original landscape plan that identified which trees were going to be preserved on the
No.
land? That was never provided.
No.
There was a tree.
I thought
Yeah, think
there
is. It
was,
shows the mitigation plan, like what we're replanting as well.
yes, I do, I thought I recalled that
Okay, I didn't recall, I think
right here.
that, I didn't recall that.
because,
It's a tree.
Oh, that's just in the front though, right?
Well, this is the one that's on.
I thought as a condition of the approval, they were supposed to go out in the field and mark all the trees that were
They were
there
gonna
and what would be,
keep,
and what,
exactly.
what they were gonna
Back.
keep, right? And I don't remember seeing that, but
and so if
could-
all the trees, have all the trees been cut on the lot?
No, there was trees that were identified that we kept and that were tagged and saved. We did like a pre-construction meeting with Concom before any of this took place.
And all of those trees remain?
The trees that were, yeah.
Yeah, related to
outside.
That was
related to
a-
Concom,
that
just
was not
related
our
to
permit.
Concom, though.
Right.
That was in
But
our-
there was in paragraph 21 of our own decision, I recall a provision that said that there would be, like Brian's mentioning, specific trees that were going to be retained on the lot, period.
they were supposed to identify the trees within the areas that were proposed for the landscape strip and for the landscaping in the cul-de-sac area, which we had jurisdiction on, that were going to be preserved.
So are
The
those,
Conservation Commission's
I understand,
jurisdiction was
separate.
on
I
the
understand.
wetlands portion, which
But
is
with-
not these areas.
but within the areas that are within our jurisdiction, have any of those trees been cut down that you had flagged to keep?
No, nothing that's been flagged to keep has been cut down. I just said, is it
Do we have-
possible to share? I just emailed Alex a plan that I'm referring to. I'm
That'd
not
be
sure if
helpful.
This is what you're. Is this the plan he's referencing?
No.
Talk amongst yourselves while I figure this out.
Conservation
I
Commission
guess,
had jurisdiction, I think that's what he's talking about.
one of the
because
things that
that's
I
the
think we
wetlands in the
need
back.
to get clarity on is whether or not, first of all, there's been a violation there. Because if there has been a violation of that, then I think we have to deal with some bigger issues. If there hasn't been a violation, then, then I think we continue to these other issues, but maybe with some additional modifications that the board, talks to tonight. But I just want to get clarity of, I think, whether or not, that violation has occurred. I hope not, but I don't know.
So Adam, what I'm understanding is that you just want to make sure that based on our decision, that there were trees to be kept, that those trees were actually kept within the area where we have jurisdiction versus where Concom.
Correct.
Okay.
I remember seeing trees and you talking about this at a previous hearing.
It's been so long at this point.
Just a second.
Are we able to zoom in a little bit?
This is labeled February 23rd.
So along the, if we can stop there for a
Hold on
second.
just a second, I can
Okay.
see that I'm not sharing the right, you can see the right one, but it wasn't the right one
For Zoom.
for Mark. For Zoom. Okay.
So are you able to just because it's kind of refreshing for all of us. Are you able to go to the screen and point to the trees that you've kept? And then Alex, can you, while he does that, can you?
So I think the ones that are remaining here are the ones, obviously these ones aren't, where the easement was. We kept as much as we could in this area here.
Were any of those flagged to be kept that were removed?
No, nothing was ever flagged by anyone.
To
For-
tag,
Yeah,
to be kept?
correct. I individually tagged the trees in the rear and some of the ones that I could preserve, that we put tape and markings around. And then these are the ones that were getting removed, those ones in green. And then these are the ones that are going to be replanted. I think about 6 of these have already been replanted at this point. And then the remainder is going to be done later.
Okay.
So the condition was that, I'm trying to find the condition that we imposed.
Is there a prescribed period of time, Lee, in that decision in which the plan pursuant to that paragraph, I think 21?
Yeah, so it says the condition was prior to site alteration, the petitioner shall mark in the field those trees which the landscape plan indicates will be retained. And the landscape plan that we asked for pertain to the trees that were located within the buffer strip along the property line, which is the area we're now talking about, which is not where the Conservation Commission had jurisdiction. And it was for the landscape island. So if there were going to be trees that were going to be in those areas that were, could be preserved, then that was supposed to be marked and brought forward.
And were there any trees in
There were a
there?
couple along the landscape buffer that we were able to keep.
And the trees in the cul-de-sac? Those are all,
Yeah, they're non-existent. I mean, because that was all.
they existed before, but they're removed.
If you have to cast way back, but if you remember, there were fairly significant grade changes through a lot of the site, basically from the 50-foot, no disturb kind of vegetated line in the front, back through where the house is on Lot 2. Almost to put the road in, to change all that grade, basically, all the trees all in that area had to come out. So none of those trees were marked on the subdivision plan for retention.
But Lee, you were saying there was supposed to be a plan.
We were supposed to get a plan that at least show where the trees were and what trees could be preserved in those areas.
We didn't receive anything.
Was that part of the thing that you, like 11 out of 12 documents, that was the one that, was that landscape plan that was submitted last meeting? Was that the missing document, or was this another landscape plan that was asked as part of this previous?
This was independent.
Order.
This was independent. That prior to basically construction taking place, they were supposed to identify what could be retained in those areas.
Got it. That's
So
part of the
because-
initial order, okay.
So because it was never received, there's no violation?
There's a condition that wasn't met, so,
Yeah, that's violation.
So this is the new plan, right,
but
Brian?
now I think we're now at the stage where that didn't happen, so.
Concom plan that was submitted back in.
Where's the existing plan? Do you have an existing plan?
Well, I just want to,
Because then you can see, yeah. No, go ahead.
I just want to hold awareness of what Lee just said. So Lee, having not received that document per 21, that then a violation exists. It's sad, a condition has not been met, I think, with the words you used. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I think.
The condition is what the condition is, and we don't have the plan. We did not receive that particular plan.
So here's my thought on that. there are significant complaints, right, that we're dealing with. And we have we have a proposed solution by the town arborist. We'll probably, we'll want to hear from you in a minute if that's satisfactory to you. We'll want to hear momentarily if that's satisfactory to the one neighbor that appeared at the hearing that's been ongoing since. And then if the board is satisfied with that, that's one issue. But I think as that condition has not been met, and there are screening problems with another neighbor, I think the board should consider seriously whether or not we want to impose additional visual screening on the opposite border, on the opposite boundary marker, the opposite boundary line, I should say. And I have another question that I'll come to a little later, but I think that as we're talking about the landscaping in particular and the trees, I think that's the direction where I'm heading. So I think it's a significant thing.
Chairman, may I respond?
Yes.
All right, so I just want to put this in context, because I think I understand how you're viewing it, but I strongly disagree. The requirement was to submit a landscaping plan for the buffer strip and the island. Any trees in those two areas that were to be retained were supposed to be identified. If there were no trees to be retained, it's a non-issue. The Center Island area, there were no trees to be retained, clearly a non-issue. The buffer strip, there were trees retained, so presumably those should have been shown on a plan. There was a plan submitted at one point, was deemed deficient, which resulted in a revised plan, which deemed deficient, which is kind of all the process of how we wound up here tonight. So I would argue, to the extent that there's been a violation, it is a technical violation only and not a substantive violation. And it doesn't extend to the opposite side of the property where there was no landscaping plan to be submitted. That's a whole other inquiry, and that would necessitate basically reopening the subdivision and starting from scratch, which obviously I would object to.
Understand.
All right? The issues about removing trees, generally speaking, every subdivision I've ever worked on, there's been a lot of trees removed. And usually, there is not a plan of this tree's kept, this tree's removed, this tree's kept, this tree's removed. That's just not generally done.
Are you saying that in all of the previous subdivision plans that you've had approved, there's been no such condition that Lee just read?
I believe the condition's been in the decision as a semi-boilerplate condition. But I, to my recollection, can't recall a plan, a sheet included in a plan set for prior subdivisions that was, again, this tree's retained, this tree's removed, this tree's retained. I think I recall on one subdivision, there was a sketch plan or something
Right.
of a disputed area, much like in this instance, the buffer strip, where trees were identified. But generally speaking, especially when you're dealing with a large parcel like this, to go and mark out and identify each individual tree that's going to be kept or removed is a huge undertaking, and generally doesn't make a lot of sense, because most of them are coming down because of the necessary grading changes. So I think, I guess part of what I'm saying here is that to make that inquiry is a whole other order of magnitude above the standard process. And to the extent on this issue, maybe, the landscaping plan that was deficient didn't identify trees to be retained, maybe it should have. So to that extent, there's a technical violation, but it's technical only in that it didn't identify trees to be retained, but there were trees retained. So it's not like trees were identified and then removed even though they were identified to be retained.
I understand your rationale. I don't know that I entirely agree with it, given, as you, in your own words, have talked about significant deficiencies, which is what's led us here. Those are your words. So I since I've been on the board, I don't recall having been in this position before, but
No, I have a quick question. Is the decision, the buffer planting strip covenant and restriction, is that from October 2023? Is that what we're basing it on?
No, we asked, basically, at the time the subdivision came in, we did not have a landscaping plan for the buffer strip, so we conditioned it, the plan, as present us with the plan of how you're gonna manage that. And then our decision always requires that the documents that implement the subdivision come in and we approve those. And one of those documents that was required as a function of what's being proposed here is this document that's going to describe what happens in that buffer strip and how it's to be maintained and to be retained in perpetuity. That was a condition of our decision.
Right, so the decision, how many conditions did we have in our decision?
So the decision has a lot of conditions in it, but the framework for it generally is that the plan was basically approved as the drawings were presented to you at that time.
Okay.
With the requirement that there be a landscaping plan provided to show how the landscaping was going to be handled in the interior of the cul-de-sac and how the landscaping was going to be managed along the buffer strip of this property. And that the documents that were required to implement the subdivision be submitted and also approved. And that generally included what we call the subdivision covenant, which puts the restrictions on it so they can't sell lots until they're released, the drainage easement, the water, I think, what was it, a drainage and sewer easement, I can't remember anymore. And then basically the restrictive covenants, which guaranteed that this is a private way and that the road maintenance responsibilities vest with the property owners and the trust documents, and then they're basically what we call a document that was going to describe what, basically ensure that within that strip area, that this buffer stayed there and that there was provisions to maintain it.
So we only had two pieces, right? The cul-de-sac and the buffer.
Yes, in terms of the
For the-
landscaping and what
For the
we
landscaping.
were
I'm just trying
looking
to
to see.
figure out, but, one second, and we want to hear from you also. But what I think the issue is that a lot of the trees came down before the landscape plan. Is that, we received it? So I think that's the,
His point is that the trees that came down had nothing to do with the buffer zone.
correct,
or
correct.
Or the cul-de-sac.
correct. But I just want to make sure, like, our jurisdiction is on the cul-de-sac.
Your jurisdiction is on the entire subdivision in terms of how you have approved it. And we did not have any provisions here that, prevented him from
Removing any trees that are not in those two
from
areas.
preparing the site, no.
But we still didn't receive those two areas until
We
after it
didn't
was
receive
done. After it
yes,
was,
we should
all the
have-
trees were removed. We should have gotten it. I'm just trying to figure out the process, right? So those are the two areas that we indicated, not the rest of the site. However, that should have been done before the site was worked on. Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the other side was never a provision, which is what you were saying. However, and yes, I'm going to have you come and speak, so don't worry. I just want to make sure that everybody understands the rules that we set forth. And what happened is that we didn't receive a plan so that we couldn't review it before it occurred.
And what was the length of time, Madam Chair, for when, just so I can
Lee
span
would-
it? Lee, do you have that, how long between, because I think this also has a lot to do with this situation as well as the length of time where.
Well, I think we were supposed to get everything within 90 days. I think we got the draft documents earlier, not within 90 days, but certainly in a very reasonable period of time. But it was basically the landscaping plan that was holding us up.
Which is not this. Or are you saying it is this landscape?
It is the landscaping
It
plan.
is this
That's
plan.
the issue. I mean, that's what we've been kind of trying to
It
resolve.
should have been by the end of July.
End of July, okay.
Last year.
Of last year.
But it also sounds like there was some, I guess they use the word jurisdiction, within the cul-de-sac. But you're saying there are no trees removed in the cul-de-sac, there's no trees in the cul-de-sac.
Right, well, there were no trees to be retained. There
But
was.
we don't know that.
House there before.
Well,
That's where the house.
well, I know there's a house somewhere in there, but we don't know what was where necessarily. I mean, we don't have any plans.
It actually was on the plan.
It is actually, it
Yeah.
does.
I don't know.
Well-
But I thought where the cul-de-sac is, you're saying where the cul-de-sac is in the plan today, that's where the original house was that was raised.
Really nothing where that was.
Well, I'm looking where the cul-de-sac is now, and I know the house very well. My mother was there. And I'm seeing the cul-de-sac, I'm seeing where the house was, and I know there were, to the west of that, and is that west, north? Something to the west, there were trees to the west of that, of the house.
Well, we would have to see an existing
Yeah.
condition plan of that
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
because we can't base it
Yeah.
on.
Well, I know what was there in the house before anything was done. I know what was at the house. I knew the backyard area, I knew the right side area of the house, which is semi-west of that. And I knew there were trees there. I don't know, this particular plan right now isn't showing anything there for maybe obvious reasons, but there was something there.
There was an existing conditions plan with the original subdivision approval. But if you go back and look at the changes in the grades, all the trees in the center of the property
We're going.
they had to go. You have some areas, I think, a 6-foot grade differential.
If you look at sheet 2 of 8 in the plans, it shows the cul-de-sac, and it, in very light outline, it shows the existing house, which is right in the middle of straddles the cul-de-sac.
Well, it's halfway in the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
halfway in the
then- And then the grade change that you see, there was,
Yeah.
that they would need to level out. Obviously, there's significant
So it makes sense that there were no trees.
Well, no, there were trees there. I'm not saying they could stay there, I'm saying there were trees there, because I know what the property looked like.
But I don't think they said there weren't any.
And I don't think our conditions were that we were going to approve which trees were gonna stay and which trees were gonna go. We just wanted
We just didn't have a plan.
wanted him to mark
Yeah, we didn't have a plan.
his
We just
his
wanted to
decision of
understand
what was gonna stay.
Yeah, what was existing and what was being.
So he had the full discretion in the cul-de-sac to say, well, even if there were trees there, to say, nothing here is staying.
Right.
I want it all to go.
No, I get that, I'm just saying there were trees there, as opposed to the statement there was
Doesn't
nothing, there's
matter.
nothing there.
Doesn't matter.
Which is part of why I describe it as a technical violation, because if we say no trees are being preserved, that's the plan, no trees are being preserved.
It's a technical violation with regard to the cul-de-sac. With regard to the buffer, however, we have the dispute about the buffer.
Yes.
About what's there, what's going to be there, what's going to stay there. Sergey wanted an opportunity to have his input on that whole thing.
Yes.
And so that was the major area, and that's what really we're discussing and fighting over tonight, except that the neighbor on the other side, who was not here in April of 2023, or if he was here, he didn't, raise any issues,
Feel the need to.
is now complaining that, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought was going to happen when I decided not to contest anything.
Right. And some of the delay, some of the time has been going back and forth, trying to work out how this buffer zone is going to be treated, what's going to be planted there, and so on. I think I should probably throw in here now, because this is also pertinent, and Adam did raise the question. We did get Ed Olson's letter, and we reviewed that, and Brian took a look at it, and he thought about it, and we do not object. We are okay with Ed Olson's recommendation. So we would be willing to go forward with that. The only thing that I would add to that, which Ed didn't actually get into in his recommendation, is the height of the trees. And you may recall from the last hearing that we mentioned that Brian has already spent time looking to see the trees he can get. And he found some 8-foot tall trees, but could not really find anything, any material numbers over 8 feet. So our caveat to Ed's recommendation would be the strip with the alternating trees, the number of trees, 6 to 8 feet in height as available.
Madam Chair, can we ask Sergey whether he's had a chance to review Ed's
Right.
letter? And
Yes, so I'd like to invite the abutters. We have two
May I also just say,
abutters.
his attorney has his hands raised and emailed me that he's eager to speak, so I don't know if you
Sure.
prefer Sergey.
What would you like to come up? Sergey, would you still like to come up? And then we can, and state your name.
You should have a microphone.
And you should have a microphone.
I'm sorry, I just didn't quite get that. So is
His
his
attorney-
attorney on the Zoom? or-
Yes, so
Okay.
he will introduce himself in a second, but I just
Yeah,
wanted.
Madam
just
Chair,
for
my
the
name is
record.
Sergey Aleyev. I'm the owner of the house at 31 Martin Drive in Needham, and I'm direct abutter to the development site of 920 South Street.
Great. And then your attorney is on the line
Or
here.
he's coming. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
coming.
if you can hear me,
Yes.
Hi there.
good evening. Thank you. Barry Fogel from Keegan Worland. I represent Mr. Aliyev, Dr. Aliyev. I want to point out for the discussion you were just having that in your decision on page 3, where you say the board approves the subdivision and the plans that were submitted, there was an existing conditions plan, sheet 2, that was just mentioned with a last revision date of February 23rd, 2023. And if you look on the legend, or the legend of that plan, there's a symbol that says tree to be removed. I don't know if you all have that on your board up or. you
We
can
don't.
follow that. But it shows the image of a tree with an X through it, a circle around it. And there, a lot of trees not shown as being cut throughout the property, not up near where the cul-de-sac was going to go, but there's a substantial number of trees on this plan with very few being shown as being cut. And so I think that's relevant not only to the abutter, Mr. Place, saying that he didn't object because he saw an existing conditions plan that had an image showing very few trees being cut. So for what it's worth on the topic you just discussed, as far as the plan that was just submitted and that Attorney Junta just said the applicant would agree to, I'm assuming that the planting would take place in the fall and not now in the midsummer when it's hot and dry. And so we would suggest that they should source trees that will have grown through the summer at the nurseries and should be able to get the bigger trees and should identify the availability of those to the board at that time. I'll leave the rest to Dr. Aliyev to speak to, but I wanted to point that out as far as the significance of the symbols and what was shown as being trees remaining and trees being removed in the plans you approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment, follow up with Attorney Barry Fogel. I actually wanted to ask Alex maybe to put on the screen, if it's possible. I have it in the car, should have brought it here. Not the current, not the recent plan was 15 trees, which applicant or developer or applicant, I don't know, presented. But the previous one was 11 trees where he wanted to plant them on, I believe, about 80 feet stretch. And if you look at that plan, you will see that there were some trees, and even the applicant himself identify as to be remained. And Attorney Barry Fogel and me, I sent a separate note to you guys, to the members, that basically confirming that these trees, which applicant was showing back, I believe he submitted that plan in February 2024, those trees were already removed. I have to add one more thing. I do remember that during all these hearings back in 2023, applicant did confirm that he would like to preserve some of the trees, and even that the big, last standing, huge, probably 200-year-old beech, American beech on the property, he basically, I think, even identified to be preserved and put a tape on it, going to die, because I did have certified arborist on my property just recently, and this tree has a disease, and it wasn't protected properly with a proper barrier, and the roots were damaged at that tree during the construction. So definitely applicant didn't do enough efforts, in my opinion, to preserve, as many trees as he could. I understand that development can happen. He needs to cut down several trees, but basically everything was cut down over there, at least on that site.
So Lee, just, thank you very much. I'm so sorry. Regarding the trees that were supposed to remain, again, what jurisdiction do we have about that?
If they're on our plan and they show to remain, then we have jurisdiction.
And so the plan that we have now,
It's a different plan, though. I
is it,
think.
is it a different plan, or is
There were
it?
different plans. One was for the plan based on the decision for this purpose.
Correct.
Separate from the plan that we're looking at now for.
No, I think I can't see it, my scale is just too small, so I can't look at what he's driving. But I think what he's arguing, I haven't had a chance to look at what he's talking about, but he's basically saying that on the subdivision plan that you approve, which shows tree locations, it identifies, it's showing tree locations and it's identifying trees that are to remain and trees that are to be demolished, and then that what's transpired out there is not consistent with this drawing, and I don't know if that's true.
Are you looking at sheet 4? Which sheet are you looking at?
Can we bring it up?
On the lower
Is that the one
right-hand
that we're
side,
looking
there's a
at?
box and it
Yeah, I
says
still don't
sheet,
understand what sheet.
sheet number of.
Lee,
of-
you're
of
looking at the
agents.
decision, right?
No, I thought he was looking at
Thumbs
the,
up then?
Is the September 9th?
If I may,
2022?
if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
that is. the
Plans are all
correct
dated
plan.
September
That-
9,
no,
2022.
That
And they're
was
at
the
each
correct
Is
sheet.
that what you're looking at, Lee?
Can't-
he's
Paul, I
talking.
can't
Paul,
hear
let's
He
not
Paul.
go, we
needs to explain what he's
can't.
looking at.
If you go back to the one that you just had, that was sheet 2, it said existing conditions in the lower right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's this sheet, I was just trying to zoom in.
Yes, and
From September
it's the one,
2022.
it's one more up above. You need to scroll over, right, no, keep going down. In the lower right-hand, you need to show the lower right-hand corner of that plan. It says existing conditions, and then to the left of the stamps, the surveying stamps, there's revision dates. The last date is the February 2023 date.
Yes.
So this is the plan that's referenced in your approval as part of the plan set that you approved. And if you go to the legend on the top left, the box on the left, there's a symbol that looks like an X through a circle, and it says tree to be removed. And the
Yes.
other symbol says tree to remain. And so all those trees that are shown, not where the cul-de-sac ended up, but I'm hard pressed to find very many trees, if any, that are shown to be removed on this plan that you approved as part of the subdivision approval.
That's correct.
I'm not looking at the same plans.
This is
I'm
just
looking at
existing
September 9,
conditions. This
2022.
doesn't show, it's
I'm
a
not
legend, but
finding
it
the
does, I don't see a
February
single
2022.
tree that's removed, so it looks like it's just existing conditions. What is
Well,
the,
but-
what is the title on the sheet?
Yeah, but none of the plans
Existing
presented.
conditions.
That's the point, though, that they use the existing conditions to show and identify every tree on the lot.
Yeah.
And any tree that does not have an X through it is to remain. And that's what
No,
paragraph
that would be a
21.
that would be a new plan that would show what's
No, no.
what's remaining and what's not. This is just, that's part of the legend, but this isn't existing conditions, is what I'm
That's
understanding.
that's how, as Barry's describing it, that's the basis for what's to stay and what's to be removed.
What's the next sheet?
Hold on one second. When I look at this, so again, I know this property well. When I look at this existing conditions, I don't know existing when necessarily, I suppose 223, I suppose. Again, it's showing there are no X's to any of the trees which they're gonna be removed, but there's also a whole area behind the house going down towards the river where there are no trees at all, but I know there used to be trees there. So I don't know existing when. I mean, there are no X's to any of these, so
Because it's an existing conditions plan.
no, I understand, I understand that, but I guess what I'm getting at, which, at some point, maybe trees were just simply taken down. Trees were taken down, then here's the existing conditions, X to any more trees coming down, but there are no more trees coming down. I don't know.
But Artie, this is an existing condition plan that's stamped by right?
Yep.
It's stamped
Yep,
by Vern Porter, right, Junior? And so what's the next sheet? What is the next sheet? What's the title of the next sheet?
next sheet is
This is
the
the
subdivision.
plan of the
first.
land.
Yeah.
So then here, do we see any X's on any of these trees?
No,
Well, the trees are basically
This
grayed
plan
out.
is-
no,
This third sheet is not This is just showing that they can make a compliant subdivision,
Okay,
so they're not gonna have.
okay,
edited-
and then what's the next plan? I just,
This is the proposed logging plan, so this is starting to get what they're actually proposing.
but
they don't
this
show
one,
any,
but they don't show any trees, and then it was
there.
based on
Yeah, not
us
showing
receiving something by July, right? I'm just trying to figure out the trajectory of this. So you saw,
Madam Chair?
Just make a point on this.
There's a big difference between the trees being removed or not on the subdivision plan. The landscaping plan for the buffer and around the cul-de-sac is a completely separate issue and only required as a condition of your approval. But to my mind, notwithstanding what Attorney Junta said of, oh, whenever I do a subdivision, this proposal came in, this plan sheet 2 is the only one that was presented to the public and to you to indicate where the applicant was proposing to remove trees. And if it was an oversight by his engineer or surveyor or whatever, I can see why both Dr. Aliev and Mr. Place on the other side would have thought there are going to still be a lot of trees out here. And why you would have thought that, and all you were concerned about as a condition for landscaping was along the buffer with Dr. Aliev, where the swale was being put in. So it's at best sort of misleading or poorly done, but this is the approved plan, and this is the approval that essentially means very few or no trees were supposed to be cut. Or it was just a mistake on the surveyor and engineer's part, but I can see what the gentleman on the other side there was saying, like, why would I come in if I thought there was still going to be a lot of trees on my border?
Every single one of these has a title.
If I may.
yes, go
I
ahead.
understand the argument, and basically saying that because no trees are shown to be removed on the existing conditions plan, none of them are being taken out, which is a bit disingenuous because it's, I would expect in any development, at least some trees are gonna be taken out. So if there are no trees marked to be taken out, then obviously the plan doesn't indicate definitively trees to be removed, trees not to be removed. In addition, I'd be curious to overlay this plan with the grading plan and the utility plan, and I think you will probably see that several of the trees basically can't coexist with the proposed changes. So if you look at the plan set as a united set, maybe there is an inconsistency because of the legend, but only because of the legend. And what the proposal is the actual proposed grading, proposed road, proposed utilities, that's the proposal.
And Mr. Genta, I understand what you're saying, I understand what he's saying also, but for us, there's something missing here, and that's a demolition plan, right? Like, and a new planting plan.
That may not be required as part of our decision, though, Natasha. So
It
a
might, but
demolition
it
plan-
looked like it was in those two locations, right? Don't we need to know like what's coming down in those two locations and what's
We needed
proposed?
to know what existed in those two locations and what's coming down in those locations.
Right, so that's missing from this packet, and that's what we should have gotten last July.
Well,
Right, that is effectively the landscape plan.
Right.
Right.
The removal of those particular areas in the cul-de-sac, and so we're missing that. And then it looks like there are a significant amount of trees here in this plan that I have here from dated, and they're gone. So that's the confusion.
What's the date on that plan?
This is September 9th, 2022,
Okay.
that I have.
there's a revision date in the box to the left of the stamps. You need to look at those.
I can't read, sorry.
It's February 2023.
That's what's in the packet, the February 2023 packet.
And that's what was approved.
But this is in the
by
packet too, because I just
I'm
opened
looking
it
at
up.
September 9th, 2022.
Yeah, me
I'm not
too.
seeing any plans.
Yeah, but there's revisions. There's a box that has the revisions in it on that plan.
Okay, so maybe so,
So I understand you're saying, I mean, when you're looking at another plan, here's the house in place, it's on top of trees,
see
and I
the
get that.
box.
And that's on the Merritt Road side. But but on the other side,
yes.
there's no interference with the trees that used to be there.
There is a utility line on that side,
I understand,
and I
okay.
think if you look at the utility line and the grading, I don't know, I'm not gonna say definitively that all of them would have to come without taking a look at the plan, because it's been several months since I last looked at the plan, but I think a quick look, you will see probably at least several of them. So, which goes to the whole, if you look at the proposed, it would be a natural inference to say there are trees that have to come down, therefore, that discounts interpreting the existing conditions plan as a definitive statement of all these trees are staying.
Well, but in the, I do have to say, in the one that was revised on 2/23, right?
Yeah.
There are highlighted trees that are existing that are no longer there.
Where are you? Natasha, I'm sorry.
What's in our packet,
It's sheet 4 of 8, I think.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Might be
Yes.
sheet 4 of 8.
This whole discussion doesn't make sense to me, because I understand what the attorney is saying, but I'm looking at a plan. This is sheet 4 of 8, that is showing a proposed house with trees without X's sitting in the middle of the house.
Sure.
right?
Now, those trees have got to come down in order to put a house there.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing any trees anywhere with X's through them. I don't know if he can point out trees with X's through them. I see that it's on the legend that trees that are coming out can be marked with an X, but I'm not seeing any trees with X's on them on any of the plans. And I'm seeing a plan with the proposal of what's going to be where it shows trees without X's on them, where they couldn't possibly exist if what else is going to be there is, so the whole discussion about which trees have X's and which trees don't have X's, to me, just, we're wasting our time talking about it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far at all, because again, we're talking about, we're looking at something, okay? I can appreciate that. We're looking at plans, but also the public is looking at plans. They're looking at plans.
Yeah.
right? And they're looking at plans that say, here are the trees that are coming down with this.
No, because there are no trees with X's on them.
Correct.
So they're not seeing any trees that are coming down.
No, that's right, they're seeing trees that are not coming down.
No, they're seeing trees that are marked on the plan, and some of them have got to come down because you can't build anything
That's not-
on this property without taking down trees.
That is not entirely the point. The point is, yes, some trees have to come down where there is a house going to be, that's logical, but they're also.
Trees have to come down where they're going to be bringing in equipment to do work, and there are trees that are coming down in order to do regrading.
Yes, but.
And
this-
so why are we wasting our time talking about what trees are coming down and what trees aren't coming
Because
down?
a lot-
What we
because-
should be talking
No,
about are
that's not true.
trees in the buffer zone.
Artie, wait one
That's
second.
our concern.
Right, but in the buffer zone, we had requested that we were told which ones were coming
But we're
down.
spending time not talking about the buffer zone. That's what I'm being
But that's-
frustrated about. We just spent 20 minutes not talking about the buffer zone, just talking about the fact that he's taken down trees. The
Right.
problem that we have, if I may vent, is that this town does not have a tree bylaw, which means the developers can do whatever they want with regard to trees.
We're not talking about a tree bylaw. We're talking about when plans are being presented to the public, when plans are being presented to the public has an opportunity to speak.
No, the plans are not presented to the public. The plans are presented to the planning
The
board.
plans are presented to the planning board, which the public sees, and Mr.
Which has nothing to do with what the planning board is doing.
Mr. Sergey had an opportunity, raised an opportunity of what he'd like to do, what he'd like to see, because he was concerned.
That's right,
Okay.
which is the buffer zone.
Yeah, which is the buffer zone. And then at this point, and if we want to go as far as the other side was not raised as a point of concern.
I understand that.
Because there were trees there, but they weren't Xed.
But we're not talking about the other
that's not
side.
in
We're
our
talking about the
purview.
whole
Right.
plan as a
No,
plan.
it's not in our purview,
I'm
it's
gonna
not in
let
our
you come out in one
it's not in our purview because the homeowner didn't raise it as a concern, because it wasn't.
didn't have the information,
because
is
it
what you're
wasn't a-
saying.
It didn't have the information they had said, don't worry about it.
I understand that.
That's what the information said.
I understand all that. I'm complaining about the fact that we're wasting time talking about something that has nothing to do with what's in front of us tonight, which is the buffer zone on the western property and what's going on the eastern side, because we have an abutter on
Well,
the
that's what we're
eastern
talking
side
about,
who
that's what
also
we're
has.
talking about, that's why we're raising the X's on the
Okay,
trees.
so let's get Justin, and then we'll have the other.
This is from a perspective from someone who actually never wasn't even part of the initial. And this, I think, I was thinking a lot about this since the last time. I think this is exacerbated because of the time, because of, another abutter who's now sitting looking at, a lot that's being, mounds of dirt. There's question of whether there's site work being done or shouldn't have been done. There's cement trucks that are there. I don't know what level of work can be done, can't be done. That's a rabbit hole. So I'm trying to figure out what do we do as a board? I think we saw procedurally, whether that's a technical glitch, whether it's and it's not the lawyerly terms, but whether it's a technical or it's intended, whatever it may be. I think there have been mistakes on both sides in terms of throughout this whole process. I think in either we didn't examine the information 100% right, or we didn't ask for it. I don't think it was furnished, whatever that may be. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I think that there were procedural issues that I think that affected on both sides. Where do we go from here? I think it seems that this is becoming more of an issue with the neighbors because it's over 1.5 years long. This process shouldn't take that long. So you're looking out your window and seeing dirt and seeing mounds and seeing dust that's getting kicked up and getting into people. And that's very frustrating. I see that. We can chase and try to figure out what we do. You had mentioned do we do a pause? Do we now, to Artie's suggestion, do we now modify on the other side for your perspective? I think we need to find the path of least resistance to be able to get this, to basically enable all parties to get a little bit of what they want. And sometimes all parties won't get everything they want. But that's where I see, I think we definitely have made some mistakes as a board. I think the applicant probably made some mistakes, whether it was intended or not, I don't know. But we need a path forward. So what is it? What is under our jurisdiction? Concon opined about the trees, that's fine over there, that was down by the Charles River. Let's talk about the buffer zone. Ed, opined about where, what kind of trees. Let's figure out that going forward. We know that there are probably trees. I see I see the icon, I see the legend, but yes, I agree with you. There was never intention not to remove a tree on this lot. With the subdivision, obviously trees, to your point, trees need to be taken down when you're doing a project this big. So let's figure out, let's compartmentalize, figuring out the buffer zone, get that settled with. Then we can figure out the cul-de-sac and whether we agree with that. Was there a new landscape plan that was submitted? I remember we were waiting for Ed to actually opine on the existing
right.
landscape plan, so which he
Right.
did. So let's figure out the next step.
But we just got it tonight.
No, true.
Madam
But we
Chair?
also have people agreeing to this. I think if all parties agree.
Well,
then-
but
now the height.
we've heard the developer agree. And
Right.
I appreciate the fact that Sergey and his lawyer,
Yeah.
and you'll forgive me if
No
you're
problem.
insulted by my calling you by your first name,
Okay, well, that's fine.
probably have not had a chance to really read Ed's letter and
No, I
digest it and
did have.
decide.
I have been working with him for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think
And
this
are
is.
you okay, with his recommendations?
Yes, I'm okay with his recommendation.
Okay,
because that's-
so we made a lot of headway.
Yeah, this is, exactly, this is one part of the deal. What actually Attorney Junta just mentioned, which I disagree, and I think this information is absolutely
With the height of the
incorrect.
tree, yeah.
With the height of the trees,
Right.
6 to 8, because you see how long this process took, and I think it's basically a very simple project, in my opinion. And we have been dealing with this since October 2023,
Right.
for different reasons. I just planted trees on my side because I had to. I actually put it in my letter to you. And there was no problem I got even 10 to 12 feet trees. And so saying that trees are not available, and especially Barry Fogel, my attorney, mentioned that if applicant decides to plant these trees now, which is not going to be correct, it's in the middle of the summer, it has to do it in the fall. He can easily basically chase and find trees, because my proposal would be, we did discuss it with Ed Olson as well, he didn't put it in his letter, that I don't want to go too far, I don't want to be unreasonable, but I think 8 to 10 feet, that's a reasonable requirement, and not to 6 to 8 feet, because in his previous proposal, the applicant was saying 7 to 8. Right now, he goes to 6 to 8. What will be the next step?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Olson, to tell us if he thinks 8 to 10 is reasonable or not reasonable?
8 to 10.
It already says it.
Yeah, he said that it was 8 to 10 is reasonable?
He didn't put it in his
Didn't address the
letter.
height.
Didn't address it.
No,
No.
That's the issue.
he didn't put a height.
So beyond the height, everything else,
Beyond the
enough
height, he
buffer, you
actually,
feel comfortable?
applicant before was proposing just one tree, and actually he was giving the presentation last time, I don't know why. He was talking about 15 trees and big spaces between them, because I think he was confused with Norway spruce. Okay,
Right,
let's
right.
go
We're
there.
not gonna
I
talk about
agree.
that. We're gonna talk about
What Ed Olson, the commissioner, proposed. 13, I think, was Cupressina, and 12 Fastigiata. I'm fine with it.
Okay.
6 feet apart, we were talking about 5 feet apart. Okay, 6 feet, I will compromise to this, that's perfectly fine.
And you're okay with the 6 feet apart? Your issue is just the height, and we can confirm with Mr. Olson? Okay.
And it's the height based on availability,
On
from what you're saying.
availability.
I've called the question and answered.
That's what I'm just, okay, got it.
Right, but
That's
I
where I wanted
just,
to-
but we're not arborists, so we just have to, okay. So,
Madam Chair, if I may?
Good, moving along nicely now, thank you.
we're trying, okay. Yes, one last time, and then we have the other abutter that has been trying to speak for 20 minutes, so.
I appreciate it. I want to say that it's not insignificant that there was this gap and fault in the plans. And, you know, it basically, what it did was it gave the proponent applicant carte blanche to cut whatever tree they wanted and to then sit here now and say, oh, I never told anybody which trees I was going to cut because some trees needed to be cut.
And we understand your opinion, and thank you, but we need to.
I want to say why that matters, Madam Chair. It matters because you've given this applicant extreme leeway. My client did not appeal your decision based significantly on the conditions in it and what plans showed and how they were approved, and his belief that it was not going to be clear cut. So what the point I'm trying to make is that you should not give this applicant more leeway. You should be very precise about the size of the trees and not include language that says whatever's available. He should be required to go out and get real good sized trees, number one. And number two, the management restriction, the covenant and restriction has to be watertight and clear along the lines of the language that we proposed, and that requires trees to be replaced if they die or get diseased. This is going to be something that matters in the long term. So the point I'm trying to make is because of the flexibility that the applicant gave himself apparently on what trees were going to be cut, no more, and the delay that's gone into putting this landscaping plan together on the buffer, we're asking you to give him no flexibility on either what he does and the covenant that should run with the land to maintain that buffer. That's the reason you should tighten up your requirements at this point and not give him any more leeway.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much for your opinion. So with that, Mr. Urga, do you have anything
We haven't
else?
seen the covenant and restrictions.
Well, actually, the covenant, the document that you gave us at the red line, I incorporated in my draft a lot of those changes, and it's gone to town council. So we're looking.
I haven't seen.
You haven't seen the final on it, but we are seriously considering the
I'm
language.
pretty sure it will be fine after Barry Fogel's comments, but.
I think,
Well, thank you, understood, thank you.
I think those changes they're in the draft now, and it's gone to town council.
And I will say, I reviewed the proposed changes that Attorney Fogel had issued, and for the most part, I don't have any issue with them. There's one paragraph that I will be providing some revisions to, but they're not so much substantive, but more clarification, I believe. But I actually agree that we need some certainty here, and I think that will serve both parties well. So having the requirement to maintain and tying it to the approved plan makes eminent sense.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other last comments?
My concern was about planting of these trees, and Mr. Olson, the commissioner, did identify there that the planting is supposed to be supervised by the professional arborist, because in my opinion, the applicant is not basically a certified.
But that is
landscaper.
not right,
Yeah.
but once we put this in,
Yeah,
then
the
that is
rest
the
is fine.
rule,
Yeah.
and then everything else,
Yeah, for the
it's
buffer
not
strip is
subjective.
okay, but as
Right.
you know, there are some other underlying problems with.
And that's in Ed Olson's
Yeah.
email
Yeah.
today,
So we will-
to have a professional arborist supervise the planting.
So we will,
I just have one question regarding, if it's my responsibility to maintain and replace these trees, does it really matter if I plant them or an arborist plants them? I have to replace them either way.
It actually
not-
does. It actually does. Not because you would do anything wrong in planting them. It's just that it gives a surety
that they have a higher
that
chance
they
of
are higher chance
surviving.
of survivability. It simply has to do with that. That's all. It's nothing against you. It's more like, you're not an arborist. No one's saying, you're not saying you're not even saying you're an arborist. So no one's pretending anything.
I think
That's
it's because of the situation, and
Yeah.
he's trying to find a solution.
Yeah.
He's creating
Planting
these more
25
objective
trees
rules.
is not just coming and planting 1 or 2 trees, it's a big investment overall for
Right.
the applicant as well, so.
We understand. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So your neighbor, the other neighbor who's been waiting patiently also. Yes, please come up. Thank you for your,
You have been waiting patiently.
Patience.
I hope.
Thank you. I'm Bob Place. We live at 914 South Street. I'm the neighbor who did not hire a lawyer during the whole process by which you decided on your decision, partly because I believed in the applicant's representations as to what he was planning to do along our side of the border. And I also relied, frankly, on you all based on your decision and what was in the diagrams as to the trees that were going to be left behind. And so I'm listening carefully as to what you are saying because, I did not hire a lawyer to get involved in this process until now. And I think it's important that you all speak to how you feel you could address the issues that are facing my side of the border. And I understand, frankly, that you want to get past this, and I want to get past this too.
No, I didn't want to get past your side of the border.
Well,
I wanted to get past the middle of the property,
okay.
which was not on your side and not on
And frankly,
Sergey's side.
I looked at the building plan and recognized that, yeah, there's some buildings going in there, and the trees that are in the middle are gone. But all the trees along the edge, particularly the trees on our side that were not marked, and in my conversations with the applicant, he said he could save, are now gone. And so what I'm suffering is basically significant visual impacts on our side. And so what I'd like to ask is, what is the appropriate way to move this forward where the applicant and us can be good neighbors? And in my mind, being a good neighbor was you put up a visual border so we don't see them and they don't see us. That's what my whole conversation with him was in the early process was how to do that and do that in a way that both of us benefited from. And what it ended up with is we have a lot of trees on our side that are a border. We're going to have to plant a lot more to provide even more visual. And there's nothing going in on his side. And so what could be done to help to mitigate this? That's really what I'm asking.
So I have a question for Lee in general. Because we didn't receive a planting plan and because by that time, and we didn't request it, right?
We did
By
request it.
July.
It was in the decision.
But we
No,
didn't
no,
receive it. We didn't receive
After we
it.
didn't receive it in a timely manner, we didn't follow up.
We didn't follow up. So there was no understanding of what trees would be left throughout the site in general, right? Because if we would have seen that every tree had to come down because, what,
No, our condition only related to the landscaping easement along the property line and what was going to happen in the cul-de-sac. We were not asking them to go out and on the whole subdivision and mark the trees that are staying and the trees that are coming down. We never do that, and that wasn't, that was not intended here.
But in paragraph 21 of the order, it speaks to marked trees which landscape plan indicates will be retained.
Which are landscape plans, but the landscape plan was referring to the plan modification that we asked for when we asked for a landscape plan to be submitted for the buffer area and for the cul-de-sac central. So that's what that was, that's what that was referring to.
thought
We asked,
that-
we asked for one plan modification. We said, give us a landscaping plan of the buffer along Sergio's property, and give us a landscaping plan for the cul-de-sac interior, and give us, and show us what's happening there in terms of trees that are going to be retained and removed.
Except.
I mean, that's what the
I
intent of
understand-
it was
I
at the time.
understand that intent, but I think, isn't that because earlier in the process, as part of our review in which we granted a decision, we approved the decision, it was based on plans which are in effect representations of what was going to happen. And
But there's
and-
grading in this easement, I think, abutting his property.
Well, we're not
so-
talking about the grading specifically, we're talking about other parts of the land in which a member of the public was, thought that they were represented by the action of the board in the plans that were presented that the board approved. That's effectively, I think, what you're saying. And that as a result of a deficiency of not receiving that plan, he was deceived. I think that's effectively what he's saying. And that's why, Paul, I was wondering if a violation had occurred, and, why we spent a couple of minutes to chat about that concept. I'm glad to see that we have resolution, pretty much on the southern side. I'm not worried about the cul-de-sac, that makes sense. But it's worth discussing this, I think. I think discussing this for a couple of minutes. I don't know, offhand, I don't know what the solution is and what our authority is. I don't know if we need to get town council's opinion. But it sounds like there might have been a problem on our side and the applicant's side.
But if I may,
Yeah.
part of the problem that I have in this entire town, which I've had now for 9 years on the planning board, is that this town has done nothing about a tree bylaw. And if you go around our town, and I understand Mr. Fogel's point, but if Mr. Fogel were to go around our town and see where houses have been taken down for new houses to be built, there are multiple developers for this town who just clear cut the entire lot. That's what's done. And the reason that's done is because I don't think we have authority to tell these developers they can't clear cut their land, except in this particular case, we were dealing with the buffer zone, and to some extent the cul-de-sac, if there were trees in the cul-de-sac that we wanted to save, because we did say we want to see a landscaping plan for the cul-de-sac. And I'm sitting here and I recognize the fact that we're talking about what's going on with the neighbors. I don't want to let the applicant off the hook about the fact that we've asked for a landscaping plan for the cul-de-sac and we don't have it. I want to see a landscaping plan for this cul-de-sac, simply because we've asked for it.
No, it's on the drawing.
It's on the drawing.
All right.
Yeah.
And there was actually one submitted a while ago.
Okay, so, unfortunately, the way things work in this town that I think kind of went unsaid with all this is that you're tearing down a house and putting up a new house, and the developers in this town have the right to just tear down trees.
Except
Unless
it
we
says
say otherwise.
Right, and that we say otherwise based on the plan that we approved.
No, we didn't say otherwise in the fact that we have plans that have in the legend trees to be removed, trees that have an X in them, and there are absolutely no trees on any of these plans that have X's in them.
So, but I relied on that.
Well, unfortunately, what I'm saying is the way things operate in this town in terms of what trees developers can take down is that wasn't a reasonable reliance. That's not unfortunately what's done in this town. We don't get plans for every single subdivision, and I'm sure the building inspector doesn't get plans for every new house that's being built that shows all of the trees that are on the lot and which trees are going to stay and which trees are going to go. The developers just take down trees.
Sorry to interrupt, but I understood that you do receive demolition plans. You do receive.
We don't receive demolition plans. The building inspector receives
Well,
demolition
And they
plans.
receive that, maybe I just don't understand the timing of this, but at what point would I, as the abutter, know what was being kept and what was being destroyed?
You probably have more experience than I do. When you get a demolition plan, do they show what trees are coming down and what trees aren't?
No. And as Lee indicated, generally speaking, you don't submit with the subdivision plan showing that, showing which trees are coming down and which trees are staying. So you really wouldn't know. There's no current part of the process that anybody would know, except there are certain things like, for example, if you have a scenic road act situation, or you have a designated buffer that's created by the bylaw, the zoning bylaw, sometimes in those limited instances, then you have to do a plan that shows what's coming down because it's specifically controlled. But for general land, there's not a requirement that a plan be provided that show what vegetation, even beyond trees, but trees in particular, what's staying and what's being removed. There's just no way to really know that. And in fact, one of the reasons why the buffer zone on the westerly side became an issue was because Brian agreed to do that. That's not a normal part of a subdivision process to have a buffer zone like that. That was something that he agreed as part of the concessions in getting the subdivision approved to try and satisfy a neighbor. Now, unfortunately, that went sideways, but the initial intent and attempt was to try and do something that worked for both sides to satisfy. But typically, if you go back and look at probably the last, 10 subdivisions, I don't think, maybe on one or two of them, you might find a little buffer thing or something, but you don't generally find buffer zones and you don't find lists of trees to be removed or retained. So unfortunately, there's just not a way to know that unless it is specifically discussed and articulated in detail.
The exception to that rule, which was actually here, is when the Conservation Commission is involved. Because the Conservation Commission insists on knowing what trees are staying and what trees are going in the portion of the land that's within their jurisdiction, which is.
Probably why that existing map had to be generated, because, and that's what it was. It was existing conditions, but it indicated future.
For the conservation land side.
Yeah. That's the confusion.
So what I'm understanding here is that there are no provisions for showing which trees are kept on sites. So you just assume that everything is going to be taken down unless you create a buffer at this point, because we don't have a tree bylaw?
Yeah.
Essentially, I have to agree with Paul.
Unless you have Concom designate a whole area that's near the wetlands.
We had a tree bylaw committee that submitted a proposed bylaw, which actually had that when you had a tear down, the developer had to show what trees are going to stay and what trees are going to go. And it had about,
And it was
he
not
could
approved?
decide, no, it wasn't approved because there were select board members who didn't want to approve it.
It's political.
One of whom was a developer, and whose name you know.
So, Paul, as you know, I'm a favor of a tree bylaw, but in this case, I'm not even thinking of the tree bylaw right now, because I understand what you're saying. There are rules.
What I'm saying is the tree bylaw is the solution to this problem. If we can never get one.
Oh, I agree that we need to do something, but we don't have it, so we're going by what we do have. What I do say, what is important is presentation in what is shown. Now, I don't think anything was intentionally, we're not going, intentionally shown a certain way because anyone's trying to get away with anything, but the fact remains is when someone sees something, they are going by what they see. They're going by what, and I'm not even talking about conversations, people have private conversations. I'm going by what was shown. It's an obligation. It's an obligation by what is shown. There having now. Oh boy. get it. There's a house on top of a tree. I get that. On top of a tree. I'm not seeing why any logic of why it happened besides just take them down. But these plans say, the visuals say they are not coming down. That's what it says. That's what it says to someone who's not a lawyer, to a kind of person who's, or maybe not a lawyer.
I'm not.
Sorry. Someone who's just coming and looking at this and saying, okay, do I say anything or do I not say anything? Oh, I don't say anything because they're staying there, so I'm not going to say anything. Because I believe what I believe what I'm seeing. And the planning board is basing their judgments because they believe what they're seeing. It has to mean something. It does.
With all due respect, Artie, we didn't look at the trees.
No, it has to
Because
mean.
the trees aren't part of the planning board's
I'm
jurisdiction.
sorry, it is, Madam Chair.
I did want
One
to
second, please.
No, this is important.
piggyback on I don't think it's as clear as you are interpreting that existing condition, because it's clearly says existing conditions, and that actually means something. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean what's going to happen going, the future. It does say existing conditions. I say the legend also says something that's not there. Perhaps that should be different, but, perhaps that was just the surveyor made a mistake and left an icon on a legend from a different format. But it's clearly an existing conditions, and it was submitted as to that. That my read would be, that's the existing.
Well, from 223 existing.
You have a regulation that
Correct.
requires,
Yeah.
The legend applies to all the sheets.
Yeah, so, okay, so the legend's, so basically it's an existing condition, so you wouldn't look to that. We would have to look for future conditions, but like what Paul was saying, that's not within the purview of the planning department, or the planning.
is. Madam Chair, I apologize.
But you need to wait a second because we have, Justin's trying to finish
It's in
his
the purview
sentence.
with regards to the areas that the buffer zone and the areas where the cul-de-sac, which is what was initially put into the request for the special permit. That was what was in question. There wasn't anything else. Now, whether it should have been or not, that's not what was requested, and that was not the action that was being asked by the planning board. So the documentation,
The documentation is missing, but at the same time, it says existing conditions
Existing
plan.
condition,
So we're missing the documentation that says new plan.
that,
We're just seeing a grading plan and, but the
correct, and we did not
planting
receive
plan-
initially, and then we said somewhere found, 9 months later found, or whatever it was, that there was no landscape plan. So we asked, and that's what brought last month's them to
Right.
come back and bring a landscape plan, which we had a whole discussion of whether, an engineer should, a stamped engineer, or whether, an actual arborist should be stamping it. We had that discussion. But like I said, that's, we talk about what a plan is, and it clearly says existing conditions, so that's what I'll say.
So I'd like to, Attorney Fogel, just to, please be quick, because I think
This would be very quick. If I recall, the last meeting, you folks acknowledged that you have regulations for subdivisions. Section 3.3.15 says, in any subdivision, every endeavor should be made to preserve existing trees. You have regulations for subdivisions. So to say that your town needs a tree bylaw for you as the planning board to require trees to be retained in accordance with the plans that are submitted for a subdivision, you don't. You have it in your regulations.
Which is why we asked for the buffer.
which is
why-
why.
Which is why we asked for the buffer.
Yeah.
But it's also,
Hold on, that's why we asked for the buffer for one abutter, not for the other.
Because the other abutter didn't present to us at the time that we were doing the subdivision, that there was an issue.
So to enforce,
I was told, and I looked at the plans, that there were going to be trees remaining.
According to the plans, which we have jurisdictional.
I hear you.
that's why
So-
I raised this.
Okay, so how are we moving forward? So we understand that the buffer on Mr. Sergey's land, everyone approves that they're, with understanding the height conditions, that's okay. It seems like everyone's okay with the island,
The questions
Right.
on the north, what are you, sorry, Natasha, what would you propose?
That I work with Brian on a planting program for our side of the property.
Can I just maybe we can clear this up right now. I'm happy to work with you. I've mentioned that I would be doing something next door, and if that was something you'd be interested in, you said that would be something you'd be interested in. Happy to contribute to some trees to help, with privacy. Obviously, it's important to us as well. I'm sorry if there was any misunderstanding with what was being cleared. I tried to mention that there is an easement buffer there for a sewer line, and there couldn't be trees too close because of roots and obviously other reasons. I tried to keep what I could where that jog is out. I'm happy to contribute to put some plantings in there to make everyone happy. I just want to get this behind us. I want to be a good neighbor. I want to keep everyone happy. And I'm sure the planning board would love to clear some time off their plate, so.
So what are you doing about the dust?
The dust, we've been putting down calcium chloride. We're trying to get water. I've reached out to Kristen Bent at DPW about a temporary meter. I haven't heard back yet. If their DPW would allow us to connect to the existing 6-inch gate that's there currently, we could work on that next week if possible. They are replacing the whole water main along South Street and don't want to let us tie back into what's there already. They want us to re-tap it with like a $20,000 valve that they're going to throw away in a few months. So that's why that's kind of been delayed on the waterfront. Additionally, we've talked to my excavator and we can work on the piles that are closest to both yours and Sergey's houses to backfill the storage trench to get that kind of leveled off. And then I can try to rough grade some loam and put some seed down there to try to stabilize any of the dirt to try to keep that down as best as possible. It's just been a challenge without the water, obviously. And same thing with the planting. I would have loved to have tried to get that going as soon as possible and give everyone privacy and space, but it just hasn't been doable with the DPW.
Truck feasible?
A water truck?
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough. I think the dust is at a point where I make sure that everyone's absolutely crawling and going at an absolute minimum. And with the calcium chloride, I haven't seen dust really kick up from the work that we're doing. Have you seen otherwise?
There's still a lot of dust. The wind blows, there's dust.
Maybe it's more of a condition of the wind, but I not from the work, at least from when I've been there, because I've been monitoring it and I've been explaining to, the guys that this is obviously important. Happy to try to stabilize that, with grass, which I think would go, a long way until we're ready to, start putting the foundation in for the house.
I would encourage you to stabilize and to hydroseed the areas where the storm area that's permanent now. Why not just grade it and seed it?
Well, the grades aren't finalized yet. That's still needs to be graded out and everything. I'm happy to try to seed it in the interim and keep that down as best we can. I don't know if it's something that you'd be willing to let us use a hose to try to seed this quicker. I'm happy to try to get a hydro seed company out there, but it does require water.
And what's the issue with DP? Have you heard from them? Are they?
Well, everything has kind of been on hold because I wanted to get this landscaping plan approved. I wanted to get the documents done. I wanted to put everything on record and then, because we don't have an approved plan that people actually have in front of them.
The approved landscaping plan.
Well, the approved subdivision plan. We have an approved subdivision plan, I guess, but it just hasn't been recorded. And it hasn't gone on record.
And I think the issue specifically with the water thing is, it's a function of DPW, I think, wants Brian to tap in a certain way with a certain valve, a certain mechanical piece
Right.
into the existing. But when they replace the main, that's all gonna get ripped up and thrown away. And that's a very expensive, a $20,000 piece item. So it's one of these things to put something of that cost in temporarily to then have it just ripped out and thrown away is a big expenditure.
So the
And it sounds
alternate.
like it's not an expenditure that the town is making.
Exactly,
Expenditure
exactly.
that
No,
they're
no, I
looking at
understand.
Brian.
So what you're
So
trying to
it's-
say is, can
it's-
we just tap in temporarily for a certain amount of time?
Exactly.
Which that will ultimately get replaced when they do the new main anyways. We had talked about that with DPW, but they said, well, we don't know exactly when we're gonna be doing this project, but since then, they've awarded the contract to a contractor. They may even have a start date now, so I feel like there's not any risk in using that valve if we were to get approval.
So it requires our approval of the site plan for him to get approval from DPW?
Well, they weren't giving him any permits because, for his subdivision to tie in, because he did not have an approved subdivision. But I think it was going to be just for this problem of fixing the water, we could make this work.
So it's really the landscape plan is the thing that.
So how fast can we get a plan based on what the
So-
arborist recommended?
So, yeah, so Brian has the information, I think. You can probably do a revised drawing
Yeah.
based upon what's been agreed here. I can confer with Ed on the height of the trees.
Confer,
You can
yeah.
get us a revised drawing.
Because I think the plan should specify the height.
And the
Since
plan
it's-
should specify the height, and I think then, provided we get a plan that kind of meets those parameters, then the board can approve it.
And what do we do about the west side?
Well, that's up to you.
I think we have some, I think we have some.
I
The
thought-
east side,
I'm sorry, east side, my apologies.
East side.
East side.
East side, west side.
Is again, Justin has said, what do we do to keep this thing moving forward? Your neighbors, you want to stay neighbors.
Yeah.
You want to get along, you want to make this thing happen, you want some privacy. What do we do to keep this thing moving?
Bob, did you get an estimate on the plantings?
Yeah, it's $100,000 worth of plantings.
100,000, okay.
And it involves considerably more trees than what you're proposing with Surgeon.
Okay.
So if you want to contribute to that, to the amount that you're contributing on Sergey's side, then that's a basis for a conversation.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing on the east side is that these two gentlemen are going to try to work it out. And hopefully,
I think
at the next hearing, we can get a report back as to how they're progressing.
Okay.
So that we can
Move forward.
hopefully make an amendment to our subdivision plan that will satisfy them.
Keep moving forward.
Sounds like a plan.
Let's just keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Does that
Everyone-
seem like a
everyone
plan
get
for
along.
your,
Everyone be happy.
for you?
You guys are living next to each other.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Everyone get along.
Right, I have to say, I mean, this is one of the things, usually, I'm working with a developer that is, I hate to say slash and burn, but they go in and then they're out.
Yeah.
But Brian's actually gonna be living there,
guys
so
wanna
he
live there.
does have an interest in trying to work these things.
Welcome to Needham.
Welcome to South Street.
Okay, so let's try to get this, I know we've all
Okay.
kind of been dragging our heels a little on this. I'm just as guilty on those documents. So, but let's,
And thank you for getting this to me.
yeah, they're all redlined and Chris Heap has them and he's gonna look at them and you'll have them by the end of the week.
We're not approving today, the buffer plan because the applicant needs to present a new plan, right? Based on the recommendation of Ed.
Correct.
And we would like to see the covenant and restrictions.
Yeah, so, he's working on those and,
Next meeting, probably, there will be some discussions about it. And also about my neighbor.
On our agenda for the next.
well, I was hoping to move it along faster than that, if we could.
Okay.
I was hoping that if he brought us a landscaping plan that basically implements what you've asked for, and everybody's fine with it, we could move it out, we could agree that we could vote to basically authorize an approval of a landscape plan compliant with what's just been represented.
But we need something on the east side.
Yeah, that's
So
not
how-
my question.
How is
Everyone get along.
Sergey and his attorney going to get that? Are we, is Brian going to get it to him, or is Brian just submitting it to us and
I
we're
would
going to get
have-
it to them?
We can, when we submit it, we can copy, I can copy Attorney Fogel.
But the east side, you will be talking,
And
Coming up
then,
with a
well,
plan.
I guess,
Coming up with
right
a
now, we
plan.
just have an approval. Right now, what I'd like to get done is get the landscaping plan done and the documents done and the subdivision plan on record. And so if we revise this drawing and we have a revised covenant and George shares it with me and his client's fine with it, as we've discussed tonight, and the other side is fine with it, then I'd like to move that forward, which is get the documents signed, get the selectmen to sign the appropriate easements, and get these documents on record.
Okay.
And do that outside of a formal meeting, because I think we've agreed on what we're going to do here. And then if there needs to be a further conversation on the east side, we can schedule that. Does that make sense?
And if I may, on the east side, that's not procedurally, technically, it's not a part of your decision now. So it's not really kind of a action item under the decision. And that can come up if the board wants to visit that at any time. You'd have to basically open things up again.
Well, I think we've made I think what it sounds like, they want to,
Yeah,
they want to
I'm
do something.
talking about procedurally.
We want to make sure it happens, though.
Right.
Right, but he wants Lee to be able to put all the
I can appreciate that,
information in.
but we have to make sure there's a process on our end that it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I understand where you're coming from,
Okay,
but,
okay, fine.
but I think procedurally, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, because you're a lot more knowledgeable on what the procedures are. And
Not necessarily, but.
what's in front of us now are alleged violations of our conditions. And so it's kind of already opened it up, because without opening up the whole thing and putting in a notice and, having a formal hearing, because we're dealing with enforcement of alleged violations, we can bring up the east side as part of that.
Well,
And the issue then becomes procedurally, once we finalize the plans and record them, we've given that away.
okay, well then, it's going to take a while to have the selectmen sign the documents and everything. So we could put it on for the next meeting. We could advance everything the way we've described it. So all the documents are done, everything's executed, the plan's ready to go, and you guys report back on how you resolved the
And we'll-
issue
and we will
between
make
you, and we
that-
do that at the next meeting in July.
And we'll make that part of the landscaping. We'll make that part of the approval.
Well, now, let's see what they come back with.
Well, what they come back at.
No, it's not part of the landscaping plan
No,
that
it's
we're
part.
asking for now, because that's totally the west
Well,
side.
not now, but what they do on the east side is going to be part of, is gonna be going through our process, approval process.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
It could be broadened to include both sides, if you choose.
If you guys can reach an agreement so that he can
Draw it up for us.
draw it up and we can get it done, that would be great.
Make it happen.
Okay.
Just make it happen.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just make it happen.
I will endeavor.
Endeavor.
I'm sure there are
Make it
multiple
happen.
ways to get there.
Just make it happen. You guys can do it.
Okay, so we'll get the documents done, this plan done, right? You guys are going to be on it right away, and
So
we'll
keep
have all
moving
these,
forward.
at least those pieces ready on the next meeting.
And Lee, will you be talking with DPW on the water issue?
I will tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, Thursday.
So by moving this thing, are we saying moving this thing through quickly, we might be able to help resolve the water issue? Is that what we're saying also?
That's what we're hoping.
Well, you want the right to be able to tie in.
Right.
Okay.
Without wasting $20,000.
Right.
First thing,
Existing
the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
thing they
yeah,
need
yeah.
in order for Lee to talk to DPW is to have air conditioning in the PSAB.
Get some ice in a fan.
I know where we can get 100 fans and 100 wet towels.
A whole bunch of ice, bags of ice, George.
Okay, Lee, are you all set?
I think so.
So there's an
Thank you
incentive
very
to get
much
this thing
to
done.
all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Get it
you.
done, get it done, move it, get it forward.
Thank you for being so patient.
Thanks, guys. I know, it sucks, but everyone can get along and move it forward.
We're trying.
We'll see each other, we'll see you at a restaurant. Awesome restaurants.
I'm really
It's gonna be
heated
noodle
about not
place.
having a tree by law after 9 years of trying to work on one.
Thank you, thank you. Good night.
How do we,
Thanks, guys.
it's a separate conversation.
Okay.
I'm only on this board another year.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much. We're moving on to the deliberation for the major project site plan for the tennis courts at the high school, right?
Yeah.
So we want to discuss what we want to see as a decision in the next meeting? Is that what?
Yes, so I can put together a draft decision for you, conditions that you want included that kind of go outside our normal window.
I think we had, I have here hours, condition on pickleball, plantings, and signage.
And the,
Netting?
And the netting, yep,
not that, it might be, it may not be a netting.
or a higher
High
fence.
Yeah, on the Webster
Right,
Street
but
side.
Be higher than
Specify
what
the
they
fences.
Came back with?
No, specifying what they came back
Yeah.
with,
Got it, yeah.
Right.
Because they- Yeah,
calling it out.
yeah, okay, got it.
Is there
Make it
anything
a
else
specific
that we
condition.
can think of that,
Landscaping,
So hours,
fence,
pickleball.
hours, condition on
signage.
pickleball, planting, signage, netting?
And then we have to resolve what the signage is gonna be.
Yeah,
Have we agreed on what the hours are going to be?
I think they,
They propose them.
yeah, I think they proposed
What was
hours
the
which were
proposal?
acceptable.
Was it 7 to 8?
I don't
That's what I
remember.
seem to
Yeah, I think
remember.
Well,
so,
someone
yeah.
wanted it to be 8 until dusk, but then the other neighbor felt that
That
they
didn't make
didn't
sense.
want it to dusk because they didn't want people playing till 9:30. What do you think?
I'm just saying one at a time,
at a
because
time.
when you're talking and Artie's talking in my ear, I can't hear either one of you.
Yeah, but that's because we don't want you to hear what I'm saying.
You're right, Adam, though. We should be one person at a time. It's hard, it's distracting. So,
I think it was 7 in the morning until 8 at night.
Yeah, I believe that was correct.
Can we have it in the hearing? Are
we have
able
it
to
in the
pull it out?
hearing, yeah.
To pull it out?
Okay, whatever the hours were. I have it.
But there was, I think there was discussion, like Natasha's saying, a discrepancy between different neighbors. One wanted it
I
later
think,
than the other.
from what I remember, one person would have rather had it earlier in the morning and wanted the evenings without tennis ball noise. And then another neighbor said, I think it was the guy with
If it's a
chickens, who
really
was saying that
nice-
I'd rather not it in the morning and I don't mind it going on till late. So, and I think then Parks and Rec basically suggested, I think it was 7 to 8. I think that's it. It's ringing in my head, but then again, we have it in the thing. But the discrepancy was because one person was a morning person, I think.
Right. So what's reasonable?
I think 7 to 8 makes sense.
7 to 8. I mean, so, because they wanted it in alignment with our contractor bylaw. I say
Right.
Our noise bylaw.
because there is no noise bylaw.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
actually not. It's actually a construction permitted activity bylaw.
Is it really?
Yeah, there's no other, we don't have any bylaw restricting noise on snow blowers, on anything, only
I
on
thought-
permitted
Yes.
related.
I thought it did apply to snow blowers and,
Just construction.
It's
and
just,
leaf
it's
blowers.
basically any permit that the building department issues for construction, that, the work that's associated with that permit.
we have
we
a lot
gotta-
of stuff we need to work on.
Yeah, but unfortunately, these are, those kinds of issues, though, are select board
I know,
issues.
well,
That's
now
a
we're in the
general
select board
bylaw.
chamber.
But the select board, okay.
I was thinking about that before I came here.
But
We
the
did.
select board actually is saying that there are things that they want the planning board to do, so maybe we should create our own list of things that we want the select board to review, right?
Well, that's just what they're working on.
I mean, I think logic
Right, but
says
we need
that,
go ahead.
I mean, logic says that people, when they
Okay.
get up and before work, people want to do something before work. Fine, 7 AM. After they get home from work, after dinner, they want to do something, go to 8 o'clock. 7, 8 o'clock makes sense.
Okay, I already stated 7:80, so we'll
Makes
read
sense to me.
it. Okay, so Lee, you're all set, right, for the decision?
I think so. I think I know the things you want to cover. I just wanted to confirm it.
Okay. Okay, so now we're on the agenda, we're on item, number 8, the discussion of and vote to adopt the code of conduct.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Did we miss something?
Can we just go back? Lee, there obviously was a revised plan.
That's what we were going to approve, the revised plan.
And the landscape plan. That showed new plantings and so on.
Right, that's what would constitute the approved set.
Great.
And we're gonna receive that the next.
Yeah, I'll
at the
do a
next meeting.
draft, and you can look at it. Yeah, I'll do a draft.
Okay.
And I'll share it with Chris ahead of the meeting, so hopefully work out any issues.
Okay, is everyone okay with that?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, so now we have the updated redlined, planning board code of conduct. Did everyone review it, and do you have any comments on the changes that were proposed, which I think are in red, right?
I sent one change to Jones, one minor change to it.
And
Is that incorporated in here? Is that what's in yellow?
I
These,
think they turned the AC off. Did they turn the AC off?
I think they did.
Warm in here?
It's like a noise bylaw, it goes till 10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock. Now we need to pull out the fan. So we need to hurry up on these things.
It's a way to get the select board meetings to.
No
actually be
member-
a little- Don't be as long.
I think these red lines may have been added by Adam.
Yeah, do you want me to explain some of them?
No member shall disparage or impugn another member during a meeting. Does that mean I have to stop making my jokes?
Do you want me to respond honestly?
No.
Then no, you're fine.
So I went through it and I didn't really have any
Yeah. it looks-
comments. If anyone else. There's a thing here, though, 3.5,
Yeah.
that is, it says, it looks like it's a discussion. It doesn't look like it's, the other ones seem like recommendations, Adam, is that right?
So the other ones were specific wording, and then we say here, we had a previous version, a previous 3.6. I don't think we should delete the former paragraph 3.6 relating to language. I think we should spell out specific remedies, including gaveling order to a meeting, inviting the speaker to refrain from demeaning or otherwise inappropriate conduct or language, enforcing the speaker's time limit, and recessing the meeting. I don't think there's anything in the court's decision, which is what Paul had referenced before, that prohibits these positive acts in an effort to restore order.
But I think we were recommended, isn't that what we were recommended by town council, Lee and Alex, to remove that?
That was my conversation with town council.
So I don't think we can,
Well, no, we, that was kind of an informal agreement that Chris and I had, that the best way to handle that was to just delete it. Because we talked about it, we talked about the case, and,
But this does nothing to, and we can get town council to review this particular section. But this does nothing, that I see, this does nothing to interfere with that decision. And it still preserves some ability of us to preserve order, A, among ourselves, and B, among the public.
see, the problem is, as a lawyer, I'm gonna say, the problem is that a person being disrespectful, demeaning, inappropriate, or otherwise in violation of community standards is a subjective standard. It's not an objective standard. You could, if a member of the public keeps dropping the F-bomb, okay, you could say that that's inappropriate, it's violative of community standards, but you know something, they got the right to do it. By that case, they've got the right to
What
do it.
George Carlin says, so we even want.
So the problem is, you're saying we should find a way to enforce this, and the court, my reading of the court case says it's incredibly difficult to not violate, to try to enforce something like that without violating that court case.
Except through the enforcement of the time standard, which is what I'm doing here. I'm also providing other opportunities. 9 times out of 10, the chair here, Natasha, gaveling and saying order, and if a member of the public drops another F-bomb, say, look, we're really trying not to swear in these meetings, can you please not swear? And by being called out, they may, maybe they'll choose not to use the F-bomb, like you say. And then if it still doesn't work, and if they're saying that, Paul Alpert is corrupt, for instance, or if they're demeaning.
Gee, I wonder where that came from.
Or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Then, then yes, we can try to restore order with a gavel. We can say that their language, is offensive, and we ask you to please not speak personally like that. And then the next remedy is to, try and enforce the speaker's time. And like Natasha said, if it's the behavior is so offensive, where any of us feel threatened, we can simply recess the meeting and cool things down. None of that violates the law or anything that, that case you mentioned.
So I have a suggestion. So Lee or Alex, can we send this to Chris and with all the changes that Adam made also and see if there's a way of restoring part of 3.6 that makes sense?
Sure, I can do that.
And why don't we see if he can come up with something?
Yeah,
If not, I mean, we don't even have a code of conduct right now, so if not.
But it
then-
sounds like we all agree on the rest of it. It's just a question about that.
On 3.3, at least on the copy I'm seeing here, I just added 1 or 2 words. On 3.3, it just says, members will not use messaging apps or other media to communicate with each other in private during the planning board meetings. I just said with each other or the public, or other in private or the public during planning board meetings. I just said, I added or the public. Did that get into, I emailed that to you.
I see it here.
Oh, it's in yours? Okay, so I'm just not on one of
Wait,
them.
there's 2 3.3s.
Okay, there it is.
There's a 3.
Yeah, he's talking about the old 3.3.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
I see it in the old 3.3.
So we need to change those numbers.
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
Okay.
Because they
Oh, yeah,
added, they
no,
added
when-
some and
when
it
this
auto
is-
added but that didn't actually then correct, because.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm thinking, at the very least, about 3.6. In the chair's discretion, the chair may impose time limits on a member's or a public, or a member of the public's time to speak, and may, in the chair's discretion, recess the meeting in order to restore order. Try that language, perhaps.
There's nothing that prevents.
Because it doesn't talk about the reasons why. It just
Right.
says that the chair feels.
And
I think what we cannot do, which is what I think I read in that decision, or what the facts were in that decision, is you can't adjourn the meeting. I think you can recess for a short period of time to get people to pull off.
Right, but you can't just stop the
But I
meeting.
can't just say, okay, this meeting's over.
Right, right.
Right, which is not what I'm proposing here.
I know.
And there's not, and
Proposing a
there's,
short recess.
and there's nothing, I wouldn't necessarily, put a finite time on the recess, but I also think that there's nothing in that decision that prohibits the chair from gaveling and saying, sir or.
That's why I'm giving it to the chair,
Right, fine.
in the chair's discretion.
You can say, can you please use more civil language? Nothing that says you can't request it. Okay?
That seems
that's fine.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay,
So then are we
So-
agreed?
I think so. And then we'll have Chris look at it and make sure
Yeah.
that none of the things that we've added to it.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
so that's number 8, the adopt code of conduct, okay? And then the next one is discussion and vote to adopt the code of conduct. So any comments from the planning board members? Sorry, not the code of conduct, the select board goals for FY 2025 and 2026.
I haven't had a chance to review these.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Do we want to hold this off till the next one, or
Yes.
is there a deadline on this, Lee?
We wanted it this month.
Oh, okay.
And this is the last
So we'll
meeting
be a
this
few weeks
month.
late.
It's pretty good for us.
Explain to Kate that it's summertime.
So I just one of the things I just wanted to say is that there is,
A
Okay, we can I'll put it back on for next week.
Yeah.
Have you
but I-
reviewed this? Is there much here that's different from last year?
Well, that's what,
No, this is last year.
This is last
You wanted
year's.
your comments about.
This is not.
She wanted our comments last year?
Well-
Share with you in the comments from last year and ask if you had any changes or if there's anything you wanted to add.
well, I think it's reasonable. The livable has something for us, which is work with the planning board on next steps related to the MBTA community housing guidelines and the update to the town's affordable housing plan. But we've already,
Where are you?
I'm on
On pages
page,
160, give or take, somewhere around 160.
yeah, 1, 2, 3,
Is
the
there anything
third
in here
page
about
of
a
it.
tree bylaw?
Yes, it says identify funding for school master plan projects and participate in planning. Evaluate evaluate next steps for use of Stephen Palmer, evaluate, expand, support Needham Housing Authority. So all of that seemed fine. That seemed fine to me. There's a parking study for accessible and connected.
Parking requirements and zoning.
The downtown redesign, phase 2, right? There's evaluate the possibility of developing a community master plan. There's DPW phased renovation and construction, capital facilities, the library, and CATH, I don't know what that is, upgrades, Kath.
Center of the Heights.
Okay, Center of the Heights. The evaluate ways to increase minority and women-owned business participation in construction, building maintenance, and other town programs, which we've been trying to do for 5 years. So hope that, and then there's sponsor a tree summit for environmentally sustainable. Prioritize and implement the climate action plan, identify parcel acquisitions to comply with land and water conservation, evaluate adoption of net zero building code, which they did, the specialized building code, right? And then the sponsor a tree summit, but maybe we should say,
Which they did schedule it, and then they
And
abandoned it.
unscheduled.
Well, no, so they
So, yeah,
scheduled it and they
nothing
unscheduled it.
Yeah, nothing scheduled yet then, yeah.
Well, no, they did schedule it and then they canceled it.
Well, yeah, they're trying to get it going again.
The tree summit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're trying to get it going.
but in 3 years, they're gonna evaluate the Chestnut Street redevelopment, which I think should be sooner than that, right? And then, I mean, I think that the tree bylaw is something that we should really push, right? Something that we just discussed. There's also any other specific, you had a
Let's see.
list, Adam, that.
So these aren't our priorities. This is just what the select board on their own are doing. And
Yes,
that's-
but they're asking us for our input as to what
Are there things
we
that,
think they should be doing.
So I think I agree with some members on this board. I don't know if I agree with all members on this board. But I do see in part as our planning requirements that, we look to see what zoning changes can be made. One of the ways we do that is when a developer comes. Another way when we deal with that is when we're dealing with, parking standards that are, so archaic. Another way we do it is we've got, clear town affordability, goals and so on that we're looking to seek. But a large part of what we're dealing with, affects the commercial sector. And the commercial sector includes the downtown and the Heights, predominantly retail, a little bit of office, but also, in other parts of the town where there are larger scale commercial developments, typically office and some industrial. And, it's pretty clear our town budget is close to 250 million, I think, give or take 240 million. I can't remember exactly, but it's around there. And we're also going to have, I think, something in the neighborhood of, $500 million of new school capital expenses, in addition to other infrastructural expenses. And the debt service, given the cost of borrowing today, is going to be really significant. And I think that we should be mindful while we're doing, undertaking other zoning for MBTA and these other things that we'll deal with, that we may also, reconsider some other zoning in other commercial districts. One of the things that I wonder, and we'll talk about this at the CEA, and I'll report back into the, to the planning board on this, if vacancies, have risen and there are certain uses that could be modified, that, it's to the town's benefit, to the extent that if there are any adverse impacts that come from this kind of thing, that it's, that there's an opportunity to mitigate those impacts. But I think from time to time, it behooves us to take a look, based on the economic conditions where we're in and where we're headed and what we actually have. And I just want us to be mindful of that. And, there may be some specific, I'm not thinking of anything by way of example, but there may be circumstances, and I think that, we want to be aware of what's happening in our business centers. And, if there are opportunities for some relief, we should consider that with the same haste that we consider these other zoning proposals.
I think that sounds great, but I just want to make sure it doesn't mean anything related to what their plan
Well, they
is.
do talk about part of their,
Their economically vital one.
Yes,
Is that what you're
exactly.
trying to say?
Exactly.
So evaluate Chestnut Street to redevelopment, maybe we can add there, evaluate, but this is a three-year plan. Maybe we can say evaluate commercial centers in Needham,
Yeah.
right, maybe, or
Yeah,
something
yes.
like that?
Yes, so Adam, I agree with where you're heading. Talking about the use purposes, the use of the property and how we're designated. I'm not sure if there's any particular spot, but you're also saying commercial. Are you talking about, for example, the other side of 128? Are you primarily thinking of that,
So
or does
I'm
it
just-
matter any particular spot?
So we have a split tax rate, and that is true with commercial regardless of whether it's retail or office. And I think we, on that basis, I'm not thinking of singling out one particular district. I think within all of our commercial districts, if we find out how these districts are performing, if they're underperforming, and and property owners are looking for some relief by uses, maybe potentially for dimensional regulations too, that at least we consider it. And if it's something that's reasonable, that's all.
I think, and we can add this to this, evaluate commercial districts in Needham as a
Right.
initiatives to begin, and then the tree bylaw, I think, is a big one.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to put
Justin, I
that.
think, wanted to say
No, I
something.
mean, I agree. I mean, this is one of, I think, the most important things for the next, 5 years. We need to figure out, what we can do to bring in, to make things a little bit more appealing, I think, because Needham is not necessarily known to be too friendly. I think zoning attorneys love us. But I think we need to, I think it is a priority for
Right.
us to, especially with Adam was saying, I mean, $500 million for schools, we're gonna be pushing above 10% on the, on our debt. It's, the fiscal picture, if you looked
Doesn't
2 years
look
ago from
good.
FinCom,
Yeah,
no bueno, and then reiterated again, I
Right.
can't see, because.
yeah, we can, Paul's.
Sorry.
uh,
I'm just kind of, I was kind of
like he's looking
standing
over-
up because I couldn't see
He
it.
was looking over a fence.
But it's like, what was that from that TV show? Like the guy.
Tool time.
But I think it's very important that we, take into account what tweakings that we can do for certain areas that necessarily aren't performing where they should be, taking advantage of our asymmetrical tax structure and try to bring in some uses to make it appealing for more businesses to come here that will then contribute to that higher tax rate to offset some of that, these long-term expenses. I think I'm significantly supporting that.
Okay, so I'm hearing, based on all of this, that evaluating commercial districts in Needham and the tree bylaw, and then the large house we're doing on our own.
Evaluated them to what? To ensure optimal economic
Well,
performance?
there's evaluate Chestnut Street redevelopment, this is evaluate commercial.
Yeah, but you evaluate them for what? So evaluate commercial districts in Needham. What does that mean?
To
How
create,
long has evaluate Chestnut Street redevelopment been on this list?
Too long.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
you
is-
know,
Process the overlay.
we were
Which is-
talking
They're
about,
saying to evaluate it for redevelopment, so that's why I'm asking you.
We were
We're gonna
talking about that
evaluate it
when
for
Ted
what
Owens
purpose?
was
To
on the
ensure
board.
that it's optimally performing economically? Is that what you're trying?
That's
how
what
you
it
wanna say
sounds like.
For optimal
Yes.
economic performance? Okay.
Flexibility of use.
And then the other piece is the tree byline. I'm not sure, that's probably goes into one of the ones before.
Environmental sustainability.
Environment, yeah.
They'll probably
Environmental
charge the
sustainability.
Climate Action Committee to work on that.
They actually,
Right, but if
the,
we add it somewhere else here, maybe it'll,
Sure, no, I agree, we should add it, but
Yeah.
I'm, you know.
Okay, those two.
and I think we need to create our own plan. I know, Adam, you had created a plan. We should review and create something similar to this, maybe not as lengthy, obviously, because we want to make sure we get through it, yeah. But we should look at that
We can just
internally.
continue on with the spreadsheet that I built.
Yeah.
Because it includes the timeline.
But we should review it together
yeah.
to see, okay, these things we've done already, these things are within this trajectory.
what is
Okay.
happening with us formulating the large house review, getting that going?
We need to,
What's happening with us?
So Natasha's asked me to start, to run that for the planning board. And I think,
well, we also need to just figure out what
We
it
need to,
is.
I think we need to create a charge.
We need
for
to
the-
create a charge for it.
I think we need to create a charge for the committee and then figure out what the membership composition should look like and set it up.
And when are we doing that?
We should be starting to do that now to get that moving so that.
I would get that moving, because I think that's pretty important.
I'll work with Adam on it. I haven't really focused on it. I was doing the MBTA stuff, but I'll focus on it next.
Okay. Okay. And so, okay, so I think if that's okay with, if we have anything else that we can relate to them next month, but at least that gives.
Yeah, I can respond.
additional
I can respond that we
information.
looked at it and these were
Okay.
the two things that you identified.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so the next thing is, select board goals. What's the next one? It's the reappointment of Steve Dornbush. And so I think that one of the things here that Lee and I were talking about is that we have not been able to fill 2 additional positions. So when, a couple of years ago, I brought to the attention of the board, they're like, we were just reappointing people that had been there for many, many years, and we should open it up. Well, we've opened it up before, and we have 2 additional positions that haven't been filled.
Which are,
what do you mean we opened it up?
We've advertised for the
We've
design review board,
advertised
and there
for
are
it.
2 vacancies on the design review board that we can't have just been unable to fill. I mean, we need another architect on the board, and I can't remember what the skill set.
3 vacancies.
That's a 3 now?
yes.
So there's a design review board
So-
there's an architect vacancy, and I can't remember what the other skill sets. I mean, we put it in the, out in the newspaper, it's on the town's website. I talked to Lisa Lichman, who services that board. We thought maybe we'd include it in, like, or I think Alex suggested this, in the newsletter the town sends out. But it's a problem, because the membership has just dwindled, and we can't seem to find people to fill the position. So I was very happy that Steve
Wants to
Dornbush,
continue.
who was appointed to fill Stephen Tanner's term, was interested in continuing to serve, because he's been an asset, and the fact that he wants to still continue is a positive.
So the architect position needs to be filled. What are the other 2 positions that need to be filled?
I don't remember what the skill set was,
Has
because
someone-
the bylaw's prescriptive.
Has someone reached out to, like, proactively, like, Tim Lund is in town, Mark Lusing has been doing it for years.
Well, Mark's been beating the bushes, believe me, trying to find people to serve.
Is it because Mark is now off the board, or?
And Mark is still on the board.
He's still on. Well, how many
Mark is on-
architects are on the board?
There's only one, Mark. So, I mean, the situation
be
we had
3.
just recently was when we wanted them to go to the design review board to review the drawings for CVS. Mark was out of the country, so there's no
Right, we need
architect.
another architect on.
Oh, so we want to have more than one architect
Yeah,
on
there's
the board.
supposed to be 2 architects
Supposed to be
there.
2.
Chad
Bob-
used,
Bob
Chad
Dillon
used
be
to,
it.
and Chad used to be on it
Yeah.
too.
And Bob Dillon.
Chad,
And Bob?
and Bob.
So
So-
it looks like it just says 2 at-large select board appointments, 1 planning board appointment who should be background in design. So it looks like the other 2 don't necessarily have a design criteria,
Right.
just so that.
So we need to be proactive, but for tonight, because I see it's 10:35 or whatever, do we have a motion to appoint Steve Dornbush
I so
again?
move, we appoint.
Second.
Okay, so Artie moved and
Justin seconded.
Justin seconded, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion carries. So I think we should proactively start trying to find people to recommend, because otherwise, no one probably even knows that we're looking for it.
So there is, so, yeah, I mean, you can see all the openings that are up on the, I mean, we should be just caring about ourselves, but there are significant openings that a lot of these committees have. It's not just common to the design review board.
Right, but right now, I think it's,
But that's a board in our
important
department.
in our
That's a board that we
department.
have appointments on, so.
right. So don't recommend them for anything. Okay, so the next thing is meeting minutes.
Wanna put those
And-
off the next time?
Do we want, yeah, do we?
Yeah, put them
Put
on.
them off.
Yeah, let's do that next time, and then report from planning director and board members. Lee, Alex, anything?
I guess the only thing I think I reported last time the status of the MBTA work, so I won't report that again. And I will work with Adam on getting the large house committee operational. And I will say that Adam might be happy about this. There's a grant that we just found out about that we might go after that would pay for the monies to hire the consultant to do the parking analysis. Which would mean we wouldn't have to tap into the 80,000. So we're considering doing that. I'm getting the details on that grant.
And how long will it take to hear back from the granting authority?
Well, we probably wouldn't be putting an RFP out until the fall. But that probably works in the sense that we're going to be so swamped with the MBTA work and the large house that if we could get a grant to pay for that
I thought we were,
work and not take it out of our 80,000, because I don't think we're going to put an RFP out for that before that, just because of the other work we're doing.
but I thought that when we talked about it before, that it might just be a continuation of Stantec, which did the work for the Heights and the center.
I got an estimate from Stantec, but under the bidding laws, we'd have to put it.
I see.
It's because the value came in above 10, you've got to put it out. And so if it's under 50,000, then you have to put it out, and then you go with a low bidder, and you have to make sure you just write a really detailed.
If it's under 50.
Then you have to write a really detailed scope, because you're living with the low bidder. But I'm not sure about the grant yet. I just wanted to inform you that we just found out about this, Alex and I, 2 days ago, so we're considering. It's due, I think it's due the beginning of July, but it would be a good fit, and then we wouldn't spend any of the 80,000 toward it, so that's all I have to report.
And then anything else, anything from the board members? No, everyone's tired. Paul just gave me a look like, no. Well, we have correspondence, a letter from the group for the MBTA, the consultants, right? To see if we still wanted to get more consulting work on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The correspondence on the tennis courts, although the hearing is closed, and we had 2 notices of hearings that are being held in Newton. And that's all I have, unless anyone else has anything. Okay, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So all in favor, say?
Aye.
Okay, so thank you, everyone.